The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'd like to welcome you to the State Treasurer's Office and the July 9th, 1:30 p.m. meeting of the North Carolina Local Government Commission. Before we get started with our agenda, I want to send special prayers to our friends in the Gulf and Texas, especially. North Carolina knows what it's like to be hit with these storms. And as a person who lost their refrigeration and their air conditioning this weekend, just those basic things are just some of what's being dealt with in Texas. So our prayers go out to those communities because I'm sure the governor will be helping Texas as Texas has helped us in the past. So with that, if you'll stand and join us for our Pledge of Allegiance, the Secretary Marshal will lead us once again in our salute to the North Carolina flag. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. I salute the flag of North Carolina and pledge to the old North State love, loyalty, and faith.
Thank you very much. Members, we have a very full and packed agenda today with some very... Yes, ma'am.
Let me know when it's going to call the roll.
Okay. Very packed agenda today. We'll be calling the roll and go through some housekeeping items. And then, as it relates to our agenda, we'll give respect to those that have driven the furthest. I think there's some people here from Cabarrus County, then go to the Rocky Mount, and then go on with our consent agenda after that. So, with that, Cindy, would you mind calling the roll?
All right. Auditor Holmes.
Present.
Thank you. She's virtual today. Secretary Marshall. Here. Room. Mr. McKinley Wooten, designee for Secretary Petty.
Present.
Virtual today. Is Mr. Burns on the line? Let's give that. Mr. Butler.
Here.
In the room. Ms. Harvey. Skip her. And Councilwoman Hoffman.
Here.
Thank you. Virtually. And Mr. Philbeck.
Here.
And Treasurer Falwell.
Here.
That is a quorum. Nothing new on the housekeeping, but for those who are new to this, the meeting proceedings are being recorded and will be made available to the public pursuant to the Department's Recording of Public Meetings Policy. I forgot to identify myself. I'm Cindy Aiken, Assistant General Counsel. Everyone, please identify yourself when you're speaking. If you are participating virtually, please mute yourself when you're not speaking. If you are calling in at your turn to speak, non-members, our AV people will unmute you. If we lose power or AV problem, the meeting will continue. Sometimes the audio and video is continuing to be broadcast, so please keep that in mind. The agenda is posted on the department website. Changes to the agenda or the order will be announced during the meeting. As before, we will take all votes by roll call, and without objection, members, your motions and seconds will be considered as yes votes unless you indicate otherwise during the roll call. And just a word to myself and everyone, the microphones are very, very sensitive in this room, so if you need to have a private conversation, welcome to exit into the lobby. And even the turning of my pages is very clearly cut on the by folks listening, so I will try to remember that myself. Thank you. That's all.
Thank you, Cindy. Members, please take a moment to look over the agenda, the items that are coming before you. Does anyone have a conflict or an apparent conflict of interest regarding the matters that are in front of us?
Mr. Treasurer, it's Nancy Hoffman. I would recuse myself for limited obligation bond item on the consent agenda.
Okay.
Mr. Treasurer, this is Vita Harvey. I would recuse myself from the City of Greensboro and Lincoln County matters due to Robinson Bradshaw's participation in the.
Thank you. When we get to the consent agenda, we will pull those items off, vote on them separately, and recognize your conflicts.
And for those who can't see, Ms. Harvey has joined us virtually.
Mr. Treasurer,
Yes, ma'am.
I don't have a conflict of interest, but I'm interested in having the Leland issue pulled off the consent agenda.
Okay. Without objection, the motion by Secretary Marshall was to have the Leland item pulled off the consent agenda and considered and voted on separately. Hearing no objection, and so ordered. Okay. With that, I'll entertain a motion to approve them. Excuse me. If any conflict should appear during our proceedings today, please let me as the chair know. I'll entertain a motion to approve the meeting minutes of June 4th.
So moved. Auditor Holmes.
Thank you, Madam Auditor. Second.
Second, Nancy Hoffman.
We'll get Ms. Hoffman's second on this one. Any further discussion about approval of the meeting minutes? Okay. Hearing none, the clerk will call the roll.
Okay, again, this is for the minutes of both the June 4th regular and June 24th special meetings. Holmes, Hoffman, Secretary Marshall.
Aye.
Thank you. Mr. Wooten.
Aye.
Mr. Butler. Ms. Harvey.
Aye.
Mr. Philbeck.
Aye.
Treasurer Falwell.
Aye.
Thank you.
Okay. Next, I'd like to draw your attention to the meeting minutes. The OPEB report, which is attachment A. Do we have a sign-up sheet when people come in? All right. If someone, we had some new guests coming, mayor and other elected officials, welcome. And he's going to hand you the sign-up sheet for those that just came in or those who haven't signed up. For those in the audience who may be interested, the OPEB and the GASB liability report is something that we have been doing for the last 8 years to let people know that what their unfunded liabilities are at these local communities, which don't come up a lot. So that's part of our reports today. And on this report, you'll find Cabarrus County, Charlotte, Garner, Greensboro, and many others. So you can see this report as we go forward. I know we have some folks who are here personally from Rocky Mount. Their unfunded health care liability is $44 million. They have nothing in the bank for that liability. And their unfunded LEO and Elcher's pension liability is over $8 million. On top of that, we do have some cities and counties that are taking some of their money and starting to whittle away at this. Hats off to Charlotte, who started this 37 years ago, I think, under Mayor Benroot. $148 million in the bank toward their $350 million unfunded liability. Councilwoman Hoffman, Greensboro, $150 million liability, $34 million in the bank, which is something. And so congratulations to those cities and counties that have done that. And I believe also that the city of Greensboro has about $8 million toward their $38 million of their LEO liability. So not that because I'm from there, but Winston-Salem recognized this about 40 years ago. Their liability is about $88 million, and they have about $80 million in the bank. So they recognized this was going to be an issue 4 decades ago and start putting money toward that. So anybody who's listening in who has responsibility of running these governments, you're looking for a place to put money, this is always something good, in my opinion, in the eyes of the rating agencies. And just to be fair and clear, there's no worst offender as far as unfunded liabilities in the state of North Carolina itself. who has a $32 billion liability. So I want to tell you that I'm not pointing the finger at anyone else, but pointing fingers back at the fact that the state of North Carolina has not done what they should have done over the last 40 years regarding this topic. So that's the attachment A. I'd like now to turn the meeting over to Jennifer and Kendra to talk about attachment C, which is a UAL unit at the town of Andrews.
So we have one unit on the unit assistance list that has come to the commission for approval of debt. It is Town of Andrews for $170,000. Installment purchase for 3 police vehicles. They went to see if they could use the enterprise program, and that did not suit their needs because of many more vehicles were needed for that than they actually needed, so they only need 3. And I will turn it over to Kendra to discuss their FPICs.
So the town of Andrews is on our unit assistance list and has been since 2015. Through the course of the years, it's been for water and sewer issues, it's been for general fund issues, but they have had some improvement in the last few years. We received their fiscal year 23 audit report in May of this year, and in that audit report, they had 3 FPICs. One was their water and sewer capital asset condition ratio. We like to see that at around 50% of the remaining life. They were at 37%. They also submitted their audit report late, and they had some material weaknesses and significant deficiencies and statutory violations. In their response to that, they have accepted that they do have a water and sewer capital asset condition ratio issue. They have an active capital improvement plan in which they are trying to improve their sewer system. They do admit that it's going to take a while for them to do that. They have, as we've heard from many other units, have had some staffing turnover and have had issues with that, as well as their auditors having staffing issues that have resulted in a late audit for at least the last 2, maybe it's 4 out of the last 5 years. They've been late on their audits. And then they have just in the last 3 or 4 months have been able to replace staff. So they feel like they're at a good staffing level now in their finance department, so that they hope that they will be able to move forward with having the audit report in a more timely basis. We did notice in their fiscal year 23 audit report that their fund balance is still at above the threshold that we like to see, and is still close to the average for units at their expenditure level, but it has dropped in the last few years. In the last 3 years, it's dropped $737,000. So there is some concern about the drop, but they still are above the threshold and are much better than they have been in the past. And these are police vehicles that they're asking for. I've talked with the town manager and the finance officer there. They have a fleet of 10 vehicles right now. They're looking to sell 6 of those vehicles due to the amount of repairs that those vehicles need, due to at least 3 of them have over 150,000 miles on them. They have reduced their police force now down to 7 officers. And if they add these 3 vehicles, they will have all 7 vehicles that are in good working condition, are relatively new, and they feel like will increase the safety of their officers out providing their public service. We have seen in their fiscal year 25 budget, they did appropriate about $66,000 out of fund balance. So I think that we probably have some staff from the unit on the line if that needs to be addressed by the board members as to how to if they are going to continue to appropriate fund balance, or if they have plans to, in order to avoid that in the future.
I presume that Tammy and James, Mayor Reed and Tammy and others are on the phone from Andrews.
We only show Tammy present,
Tammy, are you with us?
so she's self-muted.
Tammy, could you unmute, please?
Oh, yes, we are here. Thank you.
Thank you. And while we're doing that, please, all of our guests, feel free to get all the victuals and water and stuff that you would desire over here. Tammy, I see a lot of people around the state. You're the young lady I met with when I was down there recently?
Yes, sir.
Oh, good. I won't say anything that hasn't been publicized, since we are talking about police vehicles, and there was an investigation into your police department. The police chief died as reported, went to the hospital, and then came out and died
Yes, sir. That is correct.
suddenly.
Yes, sir.
That's where I can put that. So can you give us, the board, an update, since we are talking about Andrews, we are talking about police vehicles, we're talking about a police department that's has been under some level of investigation.
This is Mayor Reed. May I speak on that?
Yes, sir. Welcome, Mayor.
Hey, how are you today? I think the incident that you're talking about is when the FBI had our former police chief under investigation, and he was battling cancer and had been battling cancer for a couple of years. And it was over some classes that were being taken, but he's no longer, he did pass from a diabetic coma while he was coming back from treatment. But we have since then put in place a local gentleman that is out of the Marines, and Chief Fowles is doing an amazing job. Turned the department around. The whole town respects our police department now. Just a few short years ago, we had no officers on duty, and it has been a major learning curve since 2017. But we feel like we're on track now, and if we can keep the officers that we have in place, I feel like that we can keep the citizens and the officers safe in the town of Andrews, and I think that's vitally important. And I don't think there's anybody on the board, and even myself, that don't realize we need to do a tax adjustment and a water adjustment to make everything work out, shortly in the future. And but as far as our police department, it is the most respected police department around now. People are asking to come here where they wouldn't even come here before. And I think the integrity has really turned around in the last year. I hope that answers the question.
Yeah. Mayor, this is the treasurer. Just briefly, Tammy, do you see any contingent liabilities as a result of the investigation of Rocky or anybody else that was associated with the police department?
All that has been closed now, and that is all behind us. And if I may speak on what it was about the classes, like I said before, in a sum of less than or around $600.
Okay. All right. Thank you. And I will say, as the mayor was talking about being on track, for those of you who like to be in the mountains and like to exercise, one of our newest tourist attractions in North Carolina is not rails to trails, but pedals to, I don't know, what do you call it, Mayor?
We call it the rail tour, and it's absolutely amazing. It goes about 4 miles up towards Red Marble, and actually go to a tunnel and a waterfall up there, and it's just been an absolute hit here in Andrews, and it's helping turn Andrews around. Like many other attractions that we've got coming to Andrews, it's the board and all of our staff in here at Town Hall that's bringing people into Andrews now, and it's making a huge difference. So I'm excited about that rail tour, and it's amazing. We'd love to have y'all come out sometime and ride it.
But you have to work at it, right?
No, it's actually operated by motorized.
Oh, they didn't tell me that. They said I had to pedal.
Well, no, it's got some assistance this year. They've really upgraded this year from last year. So they do have motorized assistance. So it is great. Actually, they've invited our whole board to 1st of August to come out and our town staffing to come out and ride the rails. So we're excited about that.
And very
And if you
briefly,
don't want to pedal, they have a caboose and stuff too you can ride on.
what was that again?
If you don't want to pedal, there's a caboose in another part of the train that you can sit on.
Okay. The thing I'm talking about is a cart that has pedals on it and seats like a bicycle.
Yeah, that's it.
Yep, that's the same.
Yeah. And they seat at like 6 or 12 per cart. So it's pretty neat. Some of them have like 2 seats and 4 seats.
It doesn't involve alcohol, right?
Absolutely not. We don't recommend that with any outdoor activity like that.
All right. Well, I know you live closer to 4 other state capitals than you do Raleigh, North Carolina. So I appreciate the hospitality, Tammy. When I was out there, things were really upside down, and I appreciate you taking the time to share with me as I was looking at things both there in the Cherokee County Sheriff's Department and other kinds of things. So. Thank
Yes, sir. It was great meeting you as well.
I'll take enough time on this. Any other board members have any questions? Okay. Hearing none, staff's recommendation is. Oh, you just got back. Okay. Board's recommendation is to move approval. Do I hear a motion?
So move.
Second. Motion is second. Second by Secretary Marshall. Motion by Mr. Butler. All those, the clerk will call the roll. Here, if no further discussion, the clerk will call the roll.
For the town of Andrews, it's Butler, Marshall. Auditor Jones?
Aye.
Thank you. Mr. Wooten?
Aye.
She's absent. Ms. Harvey?
Aye.
Councilwoman Hoffman?
Aye.
Thank you. Mr. Philbeck?
Aye.
Treasurer Falwell?
Aye.
Thank you. And motion carries.
So we're on the consent agenda.
We are, but would you like to call Secretary Marshall?
Okay. Now we're on attachment D, the consent agenda. Without objection, we will remove City of Greensboro. Don't tell me. Just let me test my memory. Is Mrs. Harvey. So City of Greensboro and one other one.
Lincoln.
Lincoln County. Okay.
Lincoln County, that's right.
And third one.
Oh, third one.
Well, he said Leland. Oh, he said, I'm sorry.
Okay. All right. Without objection, and Leland, excuse me. Leland, Lincoln, Greensboro. Without objection, do I hear a motion to approve the consent agenda as before us, absent Lincoln, Greensboro, City of Greensboro, and Leland?
Treasurer,
Yes.
can I make one
Sure.
comment on the consent agenda? I do have some updated information on the item for the North Carolina Housing Finance Agency. The not to exceed amount is now $20 million. The name of the borrower through the North Carolina Housing Finance Agency is Weaver PPM Portfolio Series 2024. And then the structure is a 97-month maturity, not to exceed beyond September 1, 2032. So those are the changes. These were all voted for through the borrower and updated with the North Carolina Housing Finance Agency Board.
Thank you. Mobility Partners is on the consent agenda or not?
It's a miscellaneous non-action.
Right, it's not.
So we haven't gotten that yet.
Correct.
Good. All right. Do I have a motion to approve the consent agenda?
So moved. Thanks.
Thank you.
Second, Philbeck.
Wait a minute, who gave the motion?
Philbeck seconded.
Oh, Ms. Hoffman Campbell. Motion second being made. Any further discussion? Okay, hearing none, the clerk will call the roll.
All right, once again, consent agenda attachment D, but leaving off Greensboro, Lincoln County, and Leland. And that runs from Aqua, North Carolina project through the Fuquay, Holly Springs, Sanford, Hoffman, Philbeck, Auditor Holmes. Auditor Holmes. Oh,
Aye.
okay, thank you. Secretary Marshall. Aye. Thank you. Mr. Wooten.
Aye.
Mr. Butler. Aye. Ms. Harvey.
Aye.
And Treasurer Falwell.
Aye.
Thank you. That motion.
Before Holly Springs and Fuquay Varina and Sanford sign off, I just wanted to recognize from Holly Springs, Tina, Randy, Scott, Kendra, and Doug. And from the town of Fuquay Varina, Adam, Jim, Michael, Joanne, and the city of Sanford, Assistant City Manager Beth, and Vic and David. So I wanted to recognize all of them for being with us today. And as I said in the last meeting, with everything that you're hearing about economic development, there's a lot of pieces that are going to have to come together between Sanford and Siler City and Asheboro and Randolph County and Chatham County. Just a lot going on down there. So I hope that long after I'm the treasurer, so I hope that board members will keep that in mind as you go forward as we're trying to consolidate some of this stuff. Mr. Butler.
I just also want to recognize our board member from Greensboro, Nancy, her leadership in helping get the utilities to the Toyota $14 billion battery plant, which is featured on the cover of North Carolina Business Magazine this week. And I know she had a lot to do in doing the leadership to get the utilities extended out to that site.
Thank you very much, Mr. Bell. I appreciate that.
A lot of people asking Greensboro for water, aren't they?
They are.
Just remember, we have our straw in the yakking before you do in Winston-Salem. So just want you to know how long the straw was. So, anyway, I want to thank the people from those communities for joining us. So, thank you. And the consent agenda is approved. Okay. We'll take these.
Treasurer, we have two miscellaneous non-action items just mentioned.
All right.
I can speak to the North Carolina Capital Finance Agency resources. So it is a bond modification. It had a term that ended, but they have been negotiated, so they have extended their term with the bank. So that is within the loan agreements. And there is no vote, just informational purposes. And for the North Carolina Turnpike Authority, I'm actually going to have Cindy Aiken go over the information on that.
And after she does that, we'll go back for the agenda items. Go ahead.
This is Cindy Aiken. Yes, this is a non-action, just informational item. In 2015, the original agreement was executed between North Carolina DOT and I-77 Mobility Partners, LLC, for the hot lanes, toll lane construction on I-77.
Sandy, let me interrupt you. Could someone try to mute your phone? Brief. Thank you so much. If I'm not eating popcorn, you're not. You need to mute your phone. That's the deal we have.
And by the terms of the agreement, the private company, I-77, we call them for short, had executed a TIFIA loan, and the document stated that the state could have possibly been responsible for what they call DRAM payments. And now my mind is going to go blank on what that stands for, something, debt ratio adjustment mechanism, such that if revenues weren't quite what they expected, the state would chip in. The state never had to spend any money on that. And once the private company refinanced and paid off the TIFIA loan, which happened this past April, that triggered the elimination of the state's obligation for those grant payments by terms of that original agreement. So the DOT just notified us that this was happening, and just as an informational item, that the state is now released from that contingent obligation. And in addition, there was a small amount of refinancing gain that was shared by proportionally agreed upon amount between the private company and the state. And the state came out with $1.4 million some change as part of the refinancing gain.
Do you know what percentage of that? What?
Actually, I think I do. Let me look that up. While
1.4 is the percentage of what?
One of these files says I said.
You can get back to me, it's fine. As we go, as she's looking that up, obviously, everybody knows the importance of Charlotte to our state, and this is what's sometimes referred to as the I-77 toll road, which I believe is owned by a Spanish company. And the next treasurer and the next board will have to look into that contract, whether that road was built to a standard that when they're supposed to give it back to the state of North Carolina, that it's a real thing. That the asphalt is 21 inches instead of possibly 16 inches. Little things like that that could make a toll road just not worth much as everybody thought it was going to be worth. So just something to keep in your history there. So go ahead.
Cindy again. I remember now why I couldn't tell you what the percentage is, because David Roy from Turnpike sent this over and said the gain is based on a formula defined in Exhibit 5 of their agreement. It is not a simple present value calculation as you are accustomed to seeing on a refunding. And he's got a little picture here. It's a formula where they take net present value of equity distributions with refinancing minus net present value of equity distributions without refinancing, that amount, minus the lesser of maximum refinancing credit, maximum credit use, and I'm sorry that I don't have an exact number on that.
You know what DRAM meant. That's all that matters.
I think it was more went to the private party than to the state. Let's put it that way.
But it was predetermined a long time ago.
They had a formula, and somebody did the math, not me.
That's all I care about.
When is the surrender date on the Turnpike?
The surrender date on the Turnpike.
Well, this says 50 years from substantial completion, and David calculates that to be 2069. The state always owns it, it's just the partnership.
I knew it was way out there.
Yeah, it was 50 years from about 2019.
Thank you for dealing with that then.
I've been here a long time. I'll not be here that long.
Okay. All right, thank you. Anything, can we go back to the L and the G? Okay, let's do the G and the Lincoln County first. Do I hear a motion to approve the applicants on the consent agenda from City of Greensboro and Lincoln County with 2 abstentions?
Well, with one, Ms. Harvey is recusing from 2, and Councilman Hoffman only has to recuse from Greensboro. So that's 2 different Greensboro.
All right, let's motion to approve Greensboro.
So moved.
Motion second. Second. Mr. Butler, any further discussion? Okay, hearing none, the clerk will call the roll.
Okay, City of Greensboro Lob Financing, that's Marshall Butler. Auditor Holmes.
Aye.
Thank you. Mr. Wooten.
Aye.
Thank you. Mr. Philbeck
Aye.
and Treasurer Falwell.
Aye.
Thank you. 6, okay, so that carries 6 ayes and then 1 absent.
Okay. Do I hear a motion to entertain the applicants that were on the consent agenda from related to Lincoln County?
I move approval, Philbeck.
Yeah. Second?
Second, Nancy Hoffman.
Okay. Motion and second being made. Any further discussion? Hearing none, the clerk will call the roll.
Okay, Lincoln County Lob Financing, Philbeck Hoffman, Auditor Holmes.
Aye.
Thank you. Secretary Marshall.
Aye.
And Mr. Wooten.
Aye.
Thank you. Mr. Butler.
Aye.
Treasurer Falwell.
Aye. Okay.
Thank you.
Are we down to comparison?
Leland.
Oh, Leland, excuse me. Staff, would you like to present Leland? And then we'll hear Secretary Marshall's concerns.
Where is that in our packet? It's still in the consent.
Yes, it is in the consent. The only
Which is D? Yeah.
Yes,
Okay.
and the
There
attachment
it
on
is.
the comments
There
are
it is. There's- Yeah, I got it.
So the town of Leland has submitted an application for limited obligation bonds in the amount of not to exceed $13.5 million. This is to renovate a portion of their town hall and expansion. They did receive construction bids. Costs are known and defined. They have looking for a public sale with an estimated all-in true interest cost of 3.39, but a not to exceed of 4.5%. They have representatives here in person to answer any questions. We did receive public comments. They have been, the unit has been provided those comments. So if there are any questions, the unit or I can respond.
Okay. Secretary Marshall.
Okay. Well, obviously, this is,
Let me interrupt you. If those that are with Leland would like to come up and scoot another chair up there, I know there's one can come up or all four of you. Welcome you all. Yeah.
nobody else is coming up?
We'll save them.
Okay. And you are?
I'm David Hollis. I'm the town manager in Leland.
Okay.
Rest of them are Carly, Missy, and Paige. So
Okay. Okay.
even I could figure that one out. All right, go ahead.
Obviously, there is a lot of community concern. One of the things that concern me, and it's kind of a process question, which people around here know I kind of look at a lot. When our summary sheet coming from the staff talks about tax rates increase anticipated, and it's marked no, which I understand is technically accurate. When was the tax increase that these citizens are complaining about? When did it go into effect?
A tax increase was this year, starting in July.
So it's just started a couple days ago.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so it's not really, the effectiveness hadn't hit them yet.
Correct.
So to me, that's, while totally accurate, that's fairly disingenuous. Because it took a huge whopping tax increase to get to the point that you can say, from the time we see this, that there's no tax increase anticipated.
So the town of Leland increased their tax rate by 4 pennies.
That's the 17%?
Yes, ma'am, 17%. The debt payment for the town hall expansion and renovation was included in the previous year's budget. So the tax increase had nothing to do with the proposal to issue bonds and to take on this debt. That increase primarily was for infrastructure, for police, and for fire.
So the public was advised last year when a prior tax increase went in, if this one only started this year?
No, ma'am. So the last year's tax rate was 23 cents. The current tax rate is 27 cents. In the 23-cent tax year, the previous year, it included the debt payment because we expected to be able to move this a little quicker. Thought that we would be here before you earlier in the year, and we would then have a debt payment in that year. So we included it in that, and that was presented in the budget, and there was no outrage and public comment about that.
When I look at the debt ratio per capita before this issuance, it's $632. Is that per person, per taxpayer, per what? And it's going to almost double, $1,100 per whatever the per capita is.
By the population, is that, Jennifer?
Yeah, by population.
So the town of Leland's a growing area, one of the fastest growing.
I understand that.
And the current amount of debt that the town has is about $18 million. And this $13 million obviously is a big increase of that. But it's the project is to support the growth of the town.
But if you're telling me that increase took place last year, that goes into the $632 per capita per person, and now what's causing it to go up to double that, over $1,100 this year?
No, ma'am, so we didn't include the debt last year. We included the payment for the debt in the budget. So the debt hadn't been realized at that point.
Okay.
The debt's only being realized now.
And the debt ratio is almost doubled. That's a pretty hefty blow for the citizens.
I don't know how to answer that statement. I mean, the town of Leland is in good financial shape. We have maintained a very low tax rate and maintained a fairly minimum amount of debt through the years. And this is a significant project. And because of that, the increase is significant.
Do you believe this would have been passed by the public if you were given the chance?
Perhaps. There is some outrage about the whole tax idea here because council proposed a 70% tax increase. And that's what roused the people to come out and speak against it. If you'll look at a lot of the comments that are there, they're commenting on a proposal for a $20 million expansion. When we had our public hearing for both the budget and for this debt item, town hall expansion, there was about 150 people in attendance. We went through the process. The budget was on the agenda first. They made comments about the budget. The budget item came forward. It was passed. All of those people left the room. The next item on the agenda, 5 minutes later, was the proposal for this town hall expansion. Only 3 people remained in the room. At that point, it was presented to them that the construction loan had come in, or the construction bid had come in at $11 million. No one heard that. So all the comments that you've received primarily are based on a $20 million number that if they would have stayed 5 minutes, they would have realized that that's not the amount that the project was. So there's a lot of outrage about the budget, and it's bled over into this item, into this construction.
As you probably well know, it's not our job to second guess the political decisions that a town unit makes. But when I saw this tremendous increase of tax burden for people, it is going to be, it's going to be tough for them to swallow. And, you know, I just really feel that's an oppressive amount of an increase in 1 year. Or a glide path to that, if it's pretty quick.
So a tax burden is what you just said, the tax burden for the people.
Debt per capita.
The debt ratio.
No, not the ratio, the debt per capita. This is in dollars. 632 to 1,104.
Yes, ma'am.
Before and after. That's oppressive.
Well, the tax increase or the tax on the citizens, the property owners in Leland, is fairly small compared to statewide and to the other jurisdictions. We have a very low tax rate. So I don't feel like the tax burden on the citizen is oppressive.
Follow up. Thank you, Secretary Marshall. I'll call on Mr. Butler. One quick thing. Would your checking the box on would this result in a tax increase when you said you would rather have done this earlier in the year, so that box would have been checked differently if you'd been on the agenda in January or February?
Just, Mr. Treasurer, for me, just to be clear, staff completes that box, so I don't want to.
Okay.
And we've actually had this discussion among staff, exactly your question. I had the same question. And I think what we're checking the box for is this particular financing resulting in a tax increase. That's what we're checking the box for, and that's why the box was checked no in this case, because staff, the debt being in the application wasn't the driver of the tax increase. There were other reasons for the tax increase. So I want to make it clear that staff checked that box, and that's why, because this particular financing wasn't requiring a debt increase. And I understand with this particular case because of how much
and there wasn't information that was done earlier for other things that wasn't in there.
Right.
It just looked like it was for this project, that increase.
And when you, and I presume your page.
I'm Carly, the finance
Carly,
director.
sorry.
Second person.
I presume, as you're answering Secretary Marshall's questions, that when you talk about the tax rate, you should just talk about what's already been said here today. That does not, the oppression she's referring to, is that also not just associated with the tax rate, but the property value increase?
So the property valuation changed the previous year.
Right.
And our tax rate went from 25 cents down to 23 cents.
Valuation went up.
Because the evaluation went up. And now the tax rate has changed in the current year for 24, 25, going up 4 cents to 27 cents.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Butler, and
I just wanted to clarify one thing. I
you have
apologize.
the floor. Oh, please identify yourself.
I'm Carly Hagg, the finance director for the town of Leland. We had a balanced budget at 23 cents that included this $2.7 million debt payment when we thought that the bids would come in at around 17 million and we planned to finance 20. Then our council made a deliberate decision to increase the tax rate, appropriate $2 million to road resurfacing and about $600,000 to add a police shift for a partial year. So that's why we checked the box that it did not include a tax rate, is because we had a balanced budget with the current tax rate, including the debt payment. When the bids came in significantly lower, we were thrilled and determined that it would benefit us to reduce the time that we planned to finance the building rather than reduce the debt payment for the next year. So that's why you'll see a 6-year payment. We don't like to hold debt, and we have kept our debt very low, and that was our thought process on that, was if we can pay it off in 6 years, we'll reduce the debt faster.
Thank you.
When you tell us it came in lower than estimated, that's news to us. So many come in over.
Yes, we were shocked, thrilled.
We got some other projects in this room today that maybe you can help.
Yeah, our engineers' estimates were 17 million on construction, and they came in at 11. That was amazing for us.
Mr. Butler.
I've driven through Leland for the past 15 years, once a week usually, and I have seen the growth there, and it's just massive what's taking on there. And the overflow from Wilmington is got to go into Brunswick County, and I guess the best tangible way to say why we should support this is Leland has a Chick-fil-A. They don't usually go wrong. And we don't have another Chick-fil-A. So I would, the planned projects around in Brunswick County and proximity to Leland are just staggering, the growth in that part of the state. And I have found the city, town government in Leland most cooperative in the dealings that I've had with them through the years.
Any other questions from the virtual members? Okay. Any other comments by Secretary Marshall or staff? What is your plan B if this doesn't get approved?
Well, we have absorbed a lot of the existing building of Town Hall. Our EOC room is now cubicles for our inspections department. We've absorbed a good portion of the police wing into regular housing, regular office to house people there. We have taken break rooms and copy rooms and everything else and made offices out of them to accommodate staff. We literally are running out of room in that building other than putting cubicles in the public space or in the council chambers. So plan B is to do things like that, to have people in the public areas of the town hall.
Mr. Treasurer.
Yes, sir. Absolutely.
This is probably just a curiosity question, but it's based on one of the comments, which is comment 6, if any of you want to look at it. I guess that's where it's right across from that. Last year, you had reevaluation and set the rate at 23 cents. The person that wrote this comment indicates the statutory revenue neutral rate would have been 18 cents. Is that correct?
17.7 would have been our revenue neutral rate last year. Yes, sir.
But you set it at 23, which means you had a revenue neutral gives you the increase of your average annual increase since the last reval, but you set it at 23, it would be 17.7. You had a whopping tax increase last year as well. Would that not be accurate?
If that's how you perceive it, yes, that's in tax.
Well, the way I perceive it, I served in local government 12 years, but I still, when I look at my tax bill and it's 50% bigger than the year before, I consider that a whopping tax increase.
Yes, sir. The inflationary cost of the town are pretty significant, as everybody's dealing with that. So a revenue neutral rate during such an inflationary time is a difficult thing to go to continue to operate the town and cover the cost of everything. But you're correct.
Well, that adds more context, Mr. Treasurer and Madam Secretary, to what you were talking about. And I would be the first to tell you, for a town of 28,000, a 27-cent tax increase sounds ridiculous. Tax rate sounds ridiculously low to me. On the other hand, I can see why you're getting all these comments from citizens, because it's gone up rapidly.
Yeah, so comparable to City of Wilmington, just outside our jurisdiction, their tax rate is around 40 cents. So Leland is a very reduced cost alternative for people to live. And we have historically kept our tax rate very low and been very efficient with our operations and everything. And people have come accustomed to that, so any change or any increase is dramatic to them. And to our own fault, we have kept the tax rate very low, and it is still relatively low.
All right, we're going, any further discussion? We're going to call, do I hear a motion?
I would make a motion that we approve this request from Town of Leland.
Second?
Second, Nancy Hoffman.
Thank you. Motion and second being made. Any further discussion?
Yeah, let me just say one more thing. Because I do generally consider that if the elected board thinks this is in the best interest of the city, I will vote for it. But I do think it's better when things go up a little more slowly. And it's a local political issue and not my political issue, as I guess my point. I'm done, Mr. Treasurer.
Thank you. Motion and second being made. Any further discussion? Hearing none, the clerk will call the roll.
For the Leland financing, motion Butler, second Hoffman. Auditor Holmes.
Aye, but I echo the comments that have been shared regarding the sudden spike of the increase as opposed to something incremental.
Okay, thank you. Secretary Marshall.
That reluctant aye.
Mr. Wooten.
Aye.
Thank you. Butler. Ms. Harvey.
Aye.
Thank you. Mr. Philbeck.
Aye.
Treasurer.
I'm voting no, and I think that's healthy for people who took the time. I don't know if it's a record, but maybe a record it's a record. In my 8 years as state treasurer, to have this amount of input, even though they could have stayed 5 more minutes and maybe gotten more information, but I think it's important when we have this amount of input from a community, a record-setting amount of input from a community, that the citizens need to appreciate the genuine and sincere questioning by Secretary Marshall and all the other members of the board. So I'll be voting no to make sure those people feel like they had a voice. So.
That's 7 aye, 1 no, 1 absent. Motion carries.
Motion carries. Thank you. Safe trip back. I think you got Councilwoman Hoffman's vote because when you said cubicles in the city council chambers, so you had her at that one. So. Yeah, and you're welcome to leave, and you won't. You got your vote, and feel free to grab some water and things when you leave. So, thank you.
Thank you.
All right, keep that Chick-fil-A going for Mr. Butler. All right, now we're on to attachment E, Cabarrus County. And from Cabarrus County, we have lots of folks. Welcome. We have Steve, Mike, Kelly, Jim, Doug, all of the financial advisors. So, how about the 3 employees and somebody from the FA? You'd like to come forward? Doug Carter.
Doug's not here today.
Oh. Doug's my age, and I'm not seeing anybody up here my age. So I was questioning. All right.
Definitely nobody my age.
I've never met anybody your age.
Not a doubt.
You let the old man in, right? That's clearly what I'm saying. Anyway, welcome to Cabarrus County. Staff, like to introduce yourself, please, and for the record. So.
Mike Dell, County Manager.
Kelly Sifford, Assistant County Manager.
Steve Morris, Chairman of the Board of Commissioners.
Jim Howden, Finance Director.
Welcome. All right.
Okay, so Cabarrus County actually has two items that have been submitted they submitted the application for the van takeout. We've divided them into two items. The information needs to be updated slightly. The S&P rating needs to be AA+. The S&P rating of AAA is actually on their GEO bonds, and that is for both items. I would actually like to give a background on this program in general, because since it has spanned now going into 4 years, just a background to bring everybody to get the information to you. So in 2019, Cabarrus County started a bond anticipation note program to finance construction of part of the courthouse replacement and a couple of school renovations. So that took place with a February 4th, 2020 item on the LGC agenda. In 2022, the county then took out the 2020 bans with the fixed rate lob and entered the second ban program for the second part of the courthouse expansion and renovation. So out of a total of $185 million, $67.5 million of that was for the second part of the courthouse and several other projects. This included replacement for McAllister Elementary School, Roberta Road Elementary School, the EMS headquarters, library, radio tower, and various school improvements. The LGC staff, regarding this unit's particular band program, had concerns beginning in 2022 because of the way that the projects were structured. Normally, the project would come in and it would be one. So it was split up. So in 2020, when they came, it was only half of a courthouse. So in 2022, the staff felt like, well, they have 2 more GMPs on this courthouse. We would recommend in 2022 that the courthouse be finished. And so that's why in May of 2022, it was recommended when the item came before the LGC Commission to go ahead and have that second ban program and then also fix the 2020 bans because you would have a finished project. We communicated with the county at that time that there should always be finished projects at conclusion of the takeout, and nothing should carry over from one band program to the next. And at the end of the takeout, it should be all finished projects. During this time of this band program, the county has had 3 different finance officers and 2 assistant county managers that our staff have worked with throughout this program. Looking forward, we have seen their capital improvement plan that one of the projects is funded in 2 different fiscal year programs. But getting back to this program, all of the projects for 2020 and 2022 were based on cost estimates. So whereas one of our findings is adequate but not excessive, since they were based on estimates and not solid contract with guaranteed maximum prices, which we normally look for, the staff cannot find that these are adequate but not excessive. So when finishing out the projects, there would be not only the possibility, but what we're seeing is cost escalations and additional funding required by the county, either in the fixed rate takeout or them supplementing the projects with their own funds. However, with this particular request on the takeout of not only the second part of the courthouse, the staff would recommend the fixed rate debt takeout of the 2022 bands to finish these projects out.
Okay. I don't live in Cabarrus County. I can't pronounce it properly. So it's not a place you go eat. So some people like to, they always say Carrabba's and Manteo. You know, they don't know much about North Carolina when they use those terms. So I'm, as the chair, I see all kinds of things. And I ask staff, because I keep seeing Gastonia and Concord and Cabarrus County and airport, a lot of different things regarding that. And I asked them to provide a total of all the approvals that we've done just for that area. You're not here on behalf of the airport or on behalf of these other places, but it is a tax burden to the people who live in your county if they happen to also live in some of these other communities. And so that's why I asked for a sort of a total of all this that's happened in Cabarrus County. So the other thing I asked staff to do, and I thank staff for doing this, is to look at how much more the way that your financial advisor has advised you to finance this, how much more it's cost in order to do that. And you can blame it on higher interest rates, but the fact is these were choices that were made and things were advised to you, because I'm going to want to answer. I'm going to want to hear more about that from you or your FA. The big basic question, and I can't tell by riding by there, which I've done, is this courthouse, which I guess was built in 3 phases or 2 phases or 4 phases?
New construction in 2 phases. Renovation of the previous courthouse was the 3rd phase.
Okay. Is it occupiable?
Yes, it's occupied and used every day.
And when
that's the new courthouses.
Right.
Yeah, and we're finishing up the interior renovations of the previous courthouse.
So I come up on the, sorry, folks, I just come up on the corner, I turn left. I'm not sure if that's one way or not, but maybe it is. And I'm looking at, is that the front of the courthouse?
No, sir. If you're coming up to the stoplight right there, and you go right or left,
yes,
the front of the courthouse opens. Well, actually, there's an entrance from Church Street.
Right.
There's another entrance where there's a courthouse plaza. We've got a nice plaza area there, right next to the historic courthouse.
Okay.
Not the old courthouse, the historic courthouse. Some years old.
And I'm a visual person. It just seems to be a hell of a lot of scaffolding. So when I asked the question, do you have a certificate of occupancy? I'm really kind of.
What you're seeing is, sorry for the interruption, but what you're seeing there.
It's fine to interrupt.
The new courthouse is open. There are no scaffolding there. On the front side, that is an existing building. We have completed the exterior renovations. What you're seeing, a lot of the scaffolding and the fencing, that's the city of Concord that's coming through and redoing Union Street. The historical Union Street coming through there. So they have dug up all the utilities that are underground, tore out all of the sidewalks. They've put new utilities down and now replacing the sidewalks.
When do you expect to get a certificate of occupancy for all these tranches of all this financing and all this building and stuff?
Sure. I believe we've already have the certificate of occupancy for the new courthouse. investigating very closely.
Well, you're already in the new courthouse.
Yes, sir.
That means you're using it every day.
That's correct.
So you would have had to have had a certificate of occupancy in order.
Yes, sir.
It's being used today.
Yes, sir.
Okay, what about the other?
The next one is
2 months.
2 months out.
Okay.
Again, that was the previous courthouse that was used. A majority of it, of the interior was gutted, and we rebuilt that up. And so
Is that the last one? Huh?
Last courthouse.
Yes, sir. Yeah.
That's the last of the phases in the courthouse.
Of those phases, yes, sir. Yeah, so you had the courthouse, you had the remodeling of the previous courthouse, and we built a nice, flat area there. So those projects are.
Any comments about, well, were any of these projects voter approved?
No, sir. There's limited.
Yeah. So, is it fair as an advocate for the taxpayer to say that if you've gone to the voters, asked for approval, done a traditional kind of financing instead of these takeouts and bans, where you've been, I don't want to overstate this, but your clock's been cleaned by betting on interest rates. Interest rates have gone from, when you started this, from lows that none of us have seen in our lifetimes, even Mr. Butler's lifetime, to rises that none of us have ever really observed either. So I guess, can anybody comment about how much more this has cost the county to operate this way?
No, I don't have those numbers in front of me. We could definitely try to calculate something of that nature.
But you know it's higher.
No, I don't know it's higher.
For your FAs here, maybe they're shaking their head.
I mean, there's an interest period that they pay for the construction. I don't think there's.
Speak up and identify yourself. Sorry.
I mean, there's, during the draw program, there's an interest period that they pay during the construction period. I would say maybe that's an additional cost, but, they operate on a financial model that's based on capacity that has interest rates much higher, 5.5% than we're seeing in the market. So we all estimate everything much higher than what could be. So, the revenues that are behind all of this do not change from year to year. It's all paid for from now until about the end of time as we're looking for, and they can actually technically have additional capacity than what we're coming to y'all currently. And so there's no additional tax increases coming. It's all done within the revenues that they have dedicated annually that go into the CIF fund.
I understand that. I'm just talking about if you've done it in a traditional way without these bans and without these takeouts, and just whether you agree with the voters having an opinion about this, that's probably a difference of opinion we have. But if you just gone the traditional model and gone through a traditional financing, when interest rates were that low, there's no way that would not have cost you less in the long term.
Well, but I mean, really the biggest problem is we would have to go to market 5 or 6 times a year in order to package 8 or 9 projects up together. That, you can't start projects, so to bundle them together is really where the cost savings are, not having to pay cost of issuance multiple times, not having to go to rating agencies multiple times, not to come to you all multiple times during the year. So it really becomes there's too many projects on a list to really bring together, to bring all the contracts and permits together without us coming to market multiple times a year. So that's an increased cost as well.
Okay. Well, we're going to let Jennifer respond to that.
We have talked to not only the financial advisors, but Cabarrus County in general, because we have obviously 99 other counties that have done projects with the scale of their needs and have school bonds, which are GO bonds, or annual limited obligation bonds, which are not voter approved, that are packaged, that either come with the majority of the projects either bid, or the county has started them and get reimbursed. So it's an annual lob or a package of general obligation bonds for the school's community college programs, and we've already given them those suggestions.
Your response to that?
It's been a very successful program the county has done multiple times. It's been approved by this commission multiple times. It's used by all the other major large issuers in the state. And so, this is a cash flow type of looking at these major projects for these large programs. And so this is the most efficient way to bundle them together and then hit the market every other year rather than hitting the market every year or multiple times a year when the projects and bids and permits are in hand.
So I'm not as smart as you are, but when you say other large urban counties are using methods like this, the reason this is sticking out in my mind is it sticks out is you're the only one doing this. But I'm not maybe staff can help me with my memory.
Cabarrus County is the 10th largest county in the state, and the largest, obviously, county, Mecklenburg County, has just done a large school bond, general obligation bond. Wake County does general obligation bonds for schools and community college. The rest of the counties normally package their schools. Guilford County, obviously, has done a large general obligation bond. The county whose number 9 is Johnson County, who has just done a application for a bond referendum for schools.
And we did do that analysis, Treasurer, to look at nearby counties and some of the larger counties that Jennifer referred to see who else was doing this kind of program. And overall, I don't think it was all that prevalent. True?
No. Some of the larger units that the financial advisor is referencing, we do have some municipalities, but again, they are not responsible for schools and community colleges. There is one large county that does this band program as a supplement to their general obligation bond band programs.
Well, I'm hearing two different things. If you'd like to.
Yes, I'm Jeremy Carter, and I have a terrible cold, so I apologize that I sound like a frog. But yes, I think maybe we're getting a little disjointed from counties and cities. So yes, there's not as many counties that do this outside of GOs, so there's lots of draw programs done on a GO basis. We've all enjoyed our conversations over the years, me and Jennifer. On the lobs or COP side of things, yes, we have lots of other issuers who are using this for all kinds of programs. And it relates to the fact that you have many projects all trying to come online at a close proximity to each other. So you are trying to do more of a cash flow model where you actually get the benefit of not paying principal or full debt service from day one before something's even occupiable. We like to look at that as taxpayer equity, so that they're not paying for something out of the gate before it's even able to be used. Once again, this works in a place like Cabarrus, where you have many projects all coming at once that need to be accomplished because of the size of the growth. Cabarrus County is one of the fastest growing counties in our state. And they've actually just got their third AAA. Everybody looks at their debt. They look at the models. They actually, if you read some of the rating reports that just came out, they actually compliment the county on using these kind of cash flow methods.
So let me interrupt you.
Yes, sir, absolutely.
In hindsight, we can't live in the rearview mirror, but in hindsight, given what's happened with interest rates and what's happened with construction costs, would you, in hindsight, if you had a chance to go back and advise your client differently and do it the way that generally 99 other counties do it, would you stick with what you just said?
Well, I want the ability to go back and run models and do things. I don't want to be called to task at this exact moment. Rates go up and rates go down. We are currently in a raising rate market. We all understand and know that. We also have had the benefit in these draw programs of not actually spending the money until it's actually needed. So all of the county's programs up until this point have had zero unused. if we look at this purely on the basis of a traditional example you're giving, where rates were lower a year or two ago, well, you did not have the benefit. They're getting the benefit of paying 0% interest during the construction period program. So you would have to take that into account as well. Now, I'm not saying that will last forever, but that's what they've gotten up until this point.
Right. But if what you were saying is so appetizing, why has no one else really used too much of it?
Well, I would say that they're being used by, but almost all the large issuers are using it on the GO side. So I don't understand the differential between GO and LOBs, with the exception of, whether it was voted or not. That is something that, is outside of what we do. Okay. But a lot of the major issuers, Wake County for one, uses these programs all under the same basis of they've got multiple projects going at once. It may be schools instead of courthouses, but it's the same theory.
Well, and the model takes into effect, we're looking at 4 or 5 issuances. We're looking through their entire CIP. So when the county adopts a CIP, it's fully funded from the time they adopt it, because we're looking 4 and 5 debt issuances in the future, still able to be affordable. And I think, we have done some analyses, and we provided some of the capacity that is lost doing it traditional way. We've moved everything up a year or two and issued it all up front. We lose about $120 or $130 million of capacity during the same time period. So I would argue that it's more efficient to do the other way. They can do more projects with the dedicated monies they have coming in that are not affected by the tax rate. So, it's a frozen amount coming from the general fund every year, and it's supported by about 3 different sales taxes and some other general funds and stuff that come in.
I'm going to let Jennifer respond.
Sure. Go ahead, Jennifer. Jennifer and I have been having this conversation for years. We love it.
But not just with Jennifer.
Oh, I know. I'm sorry.
You've had it with every person that's sat in Jennifer's seat.
That's true.
Who've had the same concerns.
For informational purposes, the large counties that have the general obligation or general obligation ban programs are voter approved for a dollar amount certain. So if any overages, that county needs to take, other means to finance those projects. However, the voters have voted on those projects being done, and they know what is associated with that, what they're going to be able to get. So they actually have information before them. In addition, with the number of projects ongoing and the discussions we've had, band programs also work better with enterprise funds because it's not tagged to a particular project, but a variety of projects. So if you have a large amount of water lines, for instance, and one part of the city is inaccessible for whatever reason, and you can continue on another part of the city to prevent delay, that is where that comes in, beneficial because it is built into the rate model and increase in rates that affect everyone. So there are places that band programs do work efficiently, and general obligation bonds give the band program also that flexibility on with the contracts and everything like that. But for limited obligation bonds, with the transparency and getting the information to the taxpayers and the cost increases, that these projects are based on estimates and what has happened over the period of time to actually finish them out, and what the costs have finished out at or what they think they're going to finish out at, we have concerns.
Okay, thank you. Biff, just briefly, please stand up, identify yourself, please.
My name is Biff McGilvery, and I've worked here for a while. I retired in 2020, not 2020, and this was just coming online for the county. We were rather waiting on it. We said, and we're not surprised it was Cabarrus County due to the fact that they were right next to Mecklenburg, and they are a burgeoning community. And everything we could to dissuade. Tim Ramaki was the director of debt management at the time. And I can recall very well calling several times to try to dissuade people from getting into these draw programs. One thing, historically, I don't know if you all actually control the projects, but we reviewed them as carefully as we could. And when you keep coming back to renew draw programs, by the end of the day, we don't know where you are. And we could never figure out just exactly where in the project you were refinancing and adding money to the draw program and taking out the existing draw program. And there were just so many things that could have happened that are really highly desirable to be avoided. It was always our contention that it's great to save money and do things as inexpensively as possible, but only at a certain level of risk. And from 2008, we saw financial markets dry up, and you're coming up with millions and millions and millions of dollars. When a draw program starts playing out that you have to come up with a long-term financing, that's the reason that we insisted that with the draw programs, although the FAs and the borrowers somewhat reluctantly acceded to that, we insisted that term outs were associated with it, which means that you have a certain amount of time after the due date of the draw program, in terms of 3 to 5 years, to go ahead and pay ratably the amount of principal that you're responsible for, which is very punitive because it's generally done not only over a short period of time, but done at a variable interest rate. And I sat, as I have been here watching the economy recently over the past several years with the rising interest rate scenario, I've always harkened back to wonder just what in the world is going on with Cabarrus County, because not only are you suffering from higher interest rates, you're suffering from tremendously inflated construction costs. And it sounds great to, in fact, when times are slow and rates are low, to be able to say we can do all this and save all this money. But rather than go ahead and come up with completed plans and bid projects, you started floating draw programs, and as the draw programs, unless they've changed a lot, I believe, are predicated on variable interest rates. Isn't that so?
That's correct.
Okay. Variable interest rates are just crappy to have, pardon my French, during rising interest environments. And then when you take them out, you've saved yourself a 3-year, I guess that's the term that you all use, a 3-year draw horizon. You could have gone fixed 3 years earlier at a much lower interest rate. So now you've been paying higher interest rates on draws, and you're still paying a low reservation fee. Generally, I don't know how that works now, but you're paying a reservation fee on the undrawn amount. And then you spill out into the fixed rate environment, and now you're going 20 years at an escalated interest rate. And to me, that's just shooting yourself in the foot. And so now and now not only that, you're ready to complete the project, and you are in fact going out and trying to finalize costs that you could have finalized years ago, and you find out that they've gone up 30%. And so these things are modeled, if you will, and they're modeled at a rate where you can in fact have the capacity to accommodate an uncomfortable cost. But why in the world would you? It's nice to know you've got that extra cost out there that you can accommodate, extra capacity out there if you need to accommodate the cost. But why would you go ahead and do that? Why don't you go ahead? Like I said, it's great to save money at a certain level of risk, but the LGC's role has always been really not to save money, but to keep everybody from going broke. And in a situation like this, or in an environment like this, you're kind of pushing the envelope. And that's really all I have to say. But I've been here since day one, watching this stuff, and I've been involved in about every one of these draw programs that has been utilized. And I called the Secretary of the Commission one time, Greg Gaskin, and I said, I will just be damned if I know where they are. And I have looked at this and looked at this and looked at this. And it's not why I wasn't talking about Cabarrus County, I was talking about Charlotte Airport. Sure. But it is just, sometimes it works, sometimes it's reasonable to an extent. But we were afraid when Cabarrus County did it. I think there's a cutoff, isn't there? You have to have a certain rating before you can do draw programs. AA plus, Jennifer.
That's correct.
I said, counties in North Carolina, most of them have AA plus ratings. I can just see 10 or 11 or 12 counties get involved in this, and then we're going to have a situation where it's going to be like the Great Depression. The LGC's trying to get people out of deep water.
Thank you, Biff. Thank you. Appreciate it. Jennifer,
Can we just clarify what, you gave the background, and obviously there's been questions, but can we clarify what we're asking the commission to vote on today?
Sure. So again, this is actually broken up in two separate agenda items, and the first one I am covering, and staff makes the recommendation for the approval of the fixed rate debt takeout for the 2022 bands of $186 million to finish out that program.
and what's your definition of finish?
To close out the band program.
All the projects.
All the projects that were listed in 2022 to be finished. And if other financing to finish them out are not covered in this takeout, then the county would cover them out of their capital infrastructure fund or cash on hand. And we would like to see projects either funded in a different way or have guaranteed maximum prices or contracts going forward.
There's a great disagreement about the virtue of bands in this room today. So when you use the word finish, that's related to this, all these things around Cabarrus County regarding these projects.
That were approved in 2022.
Right. And therefore, if there's any cost overruns or anything else that comes about, Cabarrus County would have to come up with the money to do that.
Correct.
Any questions before I enter? And if we don't, then what happens?
Well, if you don't take, if the commission votes not to take out these bands, it is what Mr. McGilvery had said, that they have to come up with $186 million to take this out in, I think it's 5 years. So as their financial advisor had said that they're not, the debt is currently not showing on their audited financial statement because it's not factored in, because it's not, the bands are not set until it is fixed rate. So they are not obligated, but they are taken out. And so it is their debt that they have to pay one way or the other. So the recommendation would be to take it out long term.
Sorry, you probably hit a few radar. The debt's currently not, repeat that sentence. The debt's currently.
Because it's not currently factored into their fiscal review for their liabilities.
Right.
For rating agency factors and everything, because it is not long-term debt.
Right.
But it's still an obligation of the county, though. So it is their liability one way or the other.
Okay. All right.
We're going to separate the two meetings?
Yes. Yes.
What's it, Mr. Chair?
Yes.
What if we delay this 30? Let's marinate in this a little bit. Or have they got the time to do that? Or
I think we should flush it out.
marinate it out?
I think we should
flush it
You're
out.
irrigated right now and voted up or voted down. Ms. Marshall, you have anything?
No, I'm just overwhelmed with the information.
Okay.
Oh, I'm sorry, Secretary of State, what did you just say?
I said I'm overwhelmed with the information.
We're in a trap.
Well, you know, it just said, when I chaired the parole board, I had a big sign that said, I'm drowning in information, but I'm starving for wisdom. I'm starving for wisdom right here.
So just briefly, as board members are thinking about, does the county intend to continue using a band program?
We would like to, yes.
And if not?
If not, we'll have to look at other financing issues if the LGC is not going to approve it. But the future of that program is very little, I think, to do with the approval of this financing. I think we're getting into looking at a draw program that's a future item compared to what we need to do today for this.
So it's Cabarrus County's intent that with what you've heard, what you've discussed privately with our staff, that this is something that you will intend to continue to use as a way of financing the long-term needs of Cabarrus County.
I can only speak for myself, but I think we'll work with our financial advisors, but the program has worked for us.
But it hasn't.
I believe it's worked for us, and I believe it can work in the future. So we'll.
Somebody will look at these numbers, and they'll determine mathematically whether they agree with you or not. So.
Actually, I'm going to go back and do it myself.
All right. This is an agenda item we have two agenda items with Cabarrus County to approve the takeout of the band program associated with the projects that, as Jennifer has pointed out. Do I hear a motion to do that? Going once, going twice. Okay. There's no motion on the table. So, as I'm sure you will, you're welcome to stick around for the second agenda item and see what comes from that. Okay.
The second
Application fails currently during this meeting for lack of a motion.
The second item is $42 million. It is actually part of the same financing in itself on the sale, but separated because it is actually a new money component to the sale. So what they were going to do, in addition to taking out the $187 million draw program, they were going to add $42 million to purchase a building to be used as a new human services facility, formerly known as the ACN Corporate Headquarters in North Concord. They do have an appraisal for the building, so the costs were defined and known. And again, all of this was to be a public sale altogether.
So the second item is for the purchase of a building.
Correct. It was a new money component.
Is this purchase of this building controversial in Cabarrus County?
That would depend, obviously, on who you might talk to. This is a conversation that began with our board about probably 5 years ago when we renewed the lease a former Kmart store, which has been serving as our human services headquarters for a number of years. I think that decision was made probably about 20 years ago as a temporary solution. Since that time, that facility has proven to be inadequate for that purpose. The lease expense that we've had on that building has been substantial, as well as some of the improvements to the building, HVAC systems, mechanical systems that we're responsible for, has not been a good investment for the county. So there was clear direction from the board at that time when we did our last lease renewal to locate a replacement facility for that building before that lease term expired.
Sure.
We began the process of trying to identify a location for that facility. It was determined that during the period of time that the Human Services building had been in that location, the center of population of that used that services had shifted somewhat. So we tried to be sensitive to that. We did identify a potential location. We hired a firm to do estimates on what it would cost to construct a building there. The estimates came back anywhere from $85 to $140 million to build that facility. At that time, when we got that figure, we decided to revisit the ACN building that we talked about earlier, which had been on the market, I think, if I'm correct, about 8 years. The county had previously looked at that building as a potential location for this human services facility. At that time, we felt that there may be interest from an industrial or a commercial user for the building. So we decided not to pursue it at that time, that we would prefer to keep that building on the tax books, as well as perhaps being a job producer for the community.
So when you first start, I'm going to interrupt you because I want to get to it.
Sure.
When you first started looking at that building, what was the asking price?
That I'm not sure of.
I don't believe they had a listed asking price when it was initially out there.
Do you have a buyer's agent on this building? Is there someone in the real estate profession
Representing the county?
Yes.
Yes.
Who's not the same person as the seller's agent, right?
Correct.
Okay. Strange as that may sound, that goes on in this state.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
At any rate, we stepped away from it at that time because we would prefer it to be in private use. When we got these estimates back on what it would cost to build a new facility, then and found that building was still available for $42 million, then we decided to take a second look at it. In evaluating the facility, we determined that we were going to have to invest about $20 million to bring that building into appropriate condition. Mechanical systems, roofing replacements that were needed, ADA, bathroom requirements, etc. So we would have that completed and ready to occupy for about $62 million versus the estimates we've gotten before. In addition to that, we have also received $32.5 million from the state of North Carolina to go towards a behavioral health facility to serve the region. We determined that there was adequate additional property on the site of this building for construction of that behavioral health facility. We had previously planned to put that at another location. When this location became available, it's much more suitable. It's located for the human services facility as well as the behavioral health on a public bus line, and most importantly on the behavioral health facility, it's about 2 blocks from the regional hospital facility.
Let me interrupt. The buyer's agent, have they communicated with you that there's bids on this building in 8 years?
To my knowledge, not.
I believe
Yeah.
in the appraisal, they said that there had been some offers, but they were all kind of in range, it sounded like, with what we agreed on.
Quick answer. Has it been, water been running through it and air conditioning and heat been running through it that whole time?
Yes, it has been occupied with a skeleton crew from the company that has operated there for many years. Probably, I'm estimating 50 to 100 employees have remained and still are there.
And the building superintendent has been on site the entire time.
Yeah.
Right.
So how did you come up with 42 million?
That was the price that they asked for, that we agreed to, a willing seller and a willing buyer. We also, I think you have copies of the appraisal of the property, as well as the mechanical evaluations and all of those other pieces of information.
The application that's before us on that topic says.
So that, it's actually, it's inclusive. There was one application for the draw and the building purchase as a new money component, so it's one application. But we have all the information for the, yes, we do.
Well, if this goes the way the previous discussion went with the lack of a motion, what is your plan B?
If I think of course we were not expecting the action on the previous motion on the draw program that had previously been approved, and of course we have gone forward with that in completing these projects. So if that is not going to be approved, obviously we're going to have to determine how we're going to handle that obligation.
As far as this purchase of this building?
As far as the purchase of this building, well, hopefully this body would approve the financing for this building. If they do not, then we would have to deal with the obligations from the first issue first, and then determine if the county had the capacity from a cash standpoint to go forward with this contract. If not, then we would have to continue paying $1 million a year lease on a Kmart building that's not in an optimal location in the county.
And how much earnest money did you put down on the ACM building?
Not familiar with that. Remember?
Maybe 40,000.
Yeah, it hadn't been very much.
And I know I'm not trying to be rude or critical, but that you probably want to know off the tip of your tongue how much earnest money you put down on a piece of property. So you think it's about 40,000?
Well, we've had some turnover in staff, so the people who were originally involved are not people sitting at the table today.
Yes.
Sir, what is your parking capacity for this building?
Parking capacity.
Parking.
The engineers and architects that have looked at it have said it is adequate. I'm sure that this appraisal report would have that exact number in it.
I asked you that because we've run into this before.
I believe it has around 500 spaces. It's adequate. We have a full assessment on the building, an engineering and architectural assessment, and also a feasibility study that was done to make sure that the functions that we wanted to use that building for.
I mean, Mr. Chairman, what I'm saying, have you counted the bodies that are going to work there and going to project how many people's going to be in and out of there every day, and then add 20% to it? Because I speak from experience. If people sit here and tell me the exact same thing you're telling me, and they're trying to lease all kinds of space after it because they grossly underestimated parking needs at the facility. And that's part of the wisdom of I got more white hair than you've had.
Oh. Not too much more.
Alder Holmes, you have a comment? Sorry.
Yes, I just have a quick question. Has there been any thought of how long it would take to go back and finance this as a general obligation bond and give the people an opportunity to vote? How quickly would you all be able to make that happen? I assume that you all had a plan B.
Actually, on these issues, I would say probably there was not a plan B because we had the approved draw program initially to go. You're saying to do a general obligation on purchase of this building alone?
On the 186 million.
Okay, the 186 million was the previous item. That's an interesting question to go back to the voters and say, okay, we've spent $186 million to build this school and to complete a courthouse, and now we're going to ask your permission to borrow the money to pay for it. I've not been aware of a situation like that previously.
Yeah, I'm also not aware of many situations where lobs are used in this particular instance, or in instances like this. That's not something I'm familiar with.
It would be my impression that it's a very, very common usage of lobs. Certainly it has been for us.
It seems to me, has never been in the situation before as chair that these being attached, that, the failure of the application, I don't think there's a path forward in this meeting to approve. The first one failed for lack of a motion or a second. I don't think there's a path forward in this meeting for these things that are currently before us, unless someone disagrees. You're leaving here wanting some direction, I'm sure, and we'll get our subject matter experts together to figure out how to give you that direction in a very short order. Yes, ma'am. Auditor Holmes. Sorry.
I just want to state for the record that as a former county commissioner, I'm concerned about the lack of what seems to be thoughtfulness in bringing this forward and contingency plans. Just want to express that on the record.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Our next item, if y'all don't mind, if we just roll through this, is Rocky Mount. And
Just want to make sure everyone's here from Rocky Mount. We didn't leave anybody in the,
I certainly can, yeah.
nobody's, okay, yeah.
Mayor, Mr. Manager, and all others, welcome. I thank you for being here. We'll turn it over to Jennifer. I'm sorry, we really hoped to get out of here earlier than now, but we have not been lollygagging. Secretary Marshall.
While she's getting the papers together, I don't know who each of these people represent, who they are, so.
Hi, my name is Sandy Robertson. I'm the mayor of the city of Rocky Mount.
I'm Keith Rogers, the city manager for the city of Rocky Mount.
I'm Ted Cole with Davenport. We're financial advisor to the city.
I'm
Crystal Hunter, Finance Director for the City of Rocky Mount.
I'm Connor Cruz, bond counsel with McGuire Woods, along with Barry Nash Rusher, who couldn't be here today. Okay, thank you.
Thank you all. Welcome. Jennifer.
So the City of Rocky Mount has an item on the agenda. It's an $11.4 million financing agreement to rebuild and replace Fire Station Number 2 on South Grace Street in Rocky Mount. It is a guaranteed maximum price, and it would be going for 20 years, fixed rate 4.5428 with Bank of America. We had sent the commission members some background information, but I'd like to go into a little bit deeper explanation on this. With our staff concerns regarding the application for this financing of the fire station, was the land acquisition that the city was entering into during our preliminary discussions about the fire station. So as the information that was provided to you, we began speaking to the city primarily on their interest of having an application at some point in the future in February of 2023 for the fire station. And then during media reports in September 2023, we found out that the city was in discussions and purchasing the land acquisition for economic development purposes. So when we meet with units or have any kind of preliminary discussions with them, we like to have a comprehensive view of everything that's going on with capital plans and current and anticipated financial obligations, because especially with this, the amount involved, which was larger than the financing agreement that they were going to be putting forward, would not have been reflected in their financial statement. So we would need to take that into consideration. So the LGC staff met with the current city manager in March of 2023 at his request. He was new to the state and provided information and resources about the North Carolina Local Government Commission and government community. At the time, the city was also without a permanent finance officer for over 2 years, but Mr. Rogers was actively searching to work to fill that vacancy. And Crystal Hunter was hired in September 2023, and we were introduced as LGC staff to her over a Teams meeting in October of 2023. We were in discussions with them, but not about the land purchase. So when we were approached with the preliminary meeting about the fire station in December 2023, we did let everyone at the city and the financial advisors know that the local government commission members and staff would want to have information provided about the land acquisition, as it had already made media reports by then, and it was public information on what was going on at some level. The assumption of land and purchase and debt associated with it, we feel like that it would adversely affect the amount of cash available and debt capacity to address capital needs identified in the future. With the assumptions that were provided to us with the information about the fire station, the assumptions of revenue growth were 5%, 2.5%, and 2% ongoing for the years in the future. And with those assumptions, there were 3 fiscal years averaging $5.6 million of annual deficit within the debt service requirements, that those funds would have to either come from reserves or cash that was dedicated to their CIP. And those years would be fiscal year 20, 27, 28, and 29. On page 212 of the City of Rocky Mount's 2025 adopted budget, there's special revenue bonds issued for the Rocky Mount Event Center, which came to the Local Government Commission in 2016. And there's an annual principal and interest payment of about $3 million. Their original issuance was $36.8 million. These special revenue bonds are paid by pledge of Article 39, 40, 42 sales tax, 44 hold harmless, and franchise telecommunication, cable TV, solid waste, beer and wine. So it's lots of things that are paying for those particular bonds. However, in their projections, they're also having a projected operating loss for the event center that the city is paying for, and fiscal year 2025 adopted budget has a $3.3 million operating expense for the ongoing operating loss. So the center right now is also pulling general fund money for operating expenses. So although the fire station is a life safety issue, the large purchase of economic development, speculative land was a concern of us directly prior to this application, and with the projections and showing a projected deficit, that gives the city less leeway in the future if something should happen.
All right. Given what Jennifer said, I don't want to keep it kind of structured. Does anybody disagree with the facts of what you just said?
I don't think there's a disagreement, but I think there's some additional discussion around some of that that's warranted at some point.
It's fair. And Crystal, by the way, thank you for all the stuff you sent us. Okay. There's about four things going on here. I have a whole file on Rocky Mount that started when I was sworn in 2016. Number one. Number two, and anything I say, just I'm the chair, but just correct me. I don't want to waste anybody's time on something I'm wrong about. Okay. Number two is that as far as the economic development project, regardless of how you feel about what was going there or what was supposed to go there, and Mayor, I want to thank you for coming in the other day, because we got a lot of insight. I got a lot of insight I didn't have beforehand. Starting with the fact that this option just didn't just jump up on the table. It had been around for a number of years, but then it had been some Christmas term I'm trying to think of. I'll just let it go, but it was regifted. Is that right?
We turned the options over to a particular partner that we thought was going to be developing the project.
Right.
But they were not returned back to us until probably November, prior to the strike date of December 31.
Sure.
For the option day.
But you gave it to the Gateway, and then the Gateway gave the options to the casino company.
Well, it was a potential developer for an entertainment site. They did propose that they would like to produce gaming in that location.
Right.
So
Well, whatever the company's name is.
That's correct.
What's the name of that company?
Cordish.
Cordish, okay. All right. So, and now you have them back.
That's correct.
So whatever gift you gave away, that they gave away, now somebody's giving it back to you. and then you've exercised that option.
That's correct.
And in that process, I think staff had advised the city of Rocky Mount that financing this over a 59-month period of time may put you in some potentially, it limits your ability to, if any other contingencies were to happen. Is that fairly accurate? Okay. And then we were asked about all kinds of other things, and some of this file has to do with city council people who weren't paying their bills, and you advised me that that debt had been forgiven.
Right.
And since we have somebody representing the revenue commissioner here, I don't know what how debt forgiveness. I think I know how debt forgiveness is dealt with, but maybe McKinley can comment on that in the future. When somebody has debt forgiven for them, that's a taxable event. So maybe somebody at the city needs to look at to see if that relates to here as far as somebody getting a 1099. If I forgive your debt, then it's a taxable event to you. So that may be something you might want to look at procedurally.
Right. Just
yeah,
those transactions occurred a long time ago, right? So, and to our current situation, although
it's only germane because I've said every time I've been the treasurer that if Rocky Mount was a stock, I'd buy it.
Okay.
I've said that to you. I've said it to lots of people. And I spent a lot of time because, as a member of the council state, I was having to make a decision about the relocation of the DMV, which was pretty contentious, more contentious than maybe you might realize. So when I was up there and I was seeing bumper stickers that I didn't understand what bumper stickers meant, that's why I'm bringing this up. But it may not be germane, but it is
part of the story.
Some part of the story. So, and then last thing I have to say, and I'll turn it over, is that the city had an opportunity several years ago to actually fulfill the needs, the fire safety needs of its community for this fire station number 2 at this property for $4 million. And it was tabled. And you may disagree with this what's said here. That's your, obviously, you can't control what people print. But for reasons that no one wanted to share. So one of your city council people tabled the building of the fire station that we're discussing today several years ago at a cost of about a third of what it is that's before us now. Since we met, were you able to get any insight as to what other factors that,
I think what we could say, Representative, is that we tabled the matter and then we went through a period of inflationary costs, commodity pricing increases, and labor shortages that have added to compounding the issue associated with cost. There was some discussion, and there continues to be some discussion about how we could utilize some of this in an effort to redevelop some of that particular neighborhood. And it includes a project that's concurrent with Boys and Girls Club, as well as some other parties involved in that particular option. But that's not the primary driver, I don't believe, as it relates to the cost associated with the increase here.
and I think when we met, we had spoken about another fire station that's 40% smaller than this one, being built for a dramatically lower cost per square feet that's 14 miles away. So maybe I don't know if you've explored that or not, but I'll just say on the record, I'm generally not a fan of design build. I'm not a fan of guaranteed maximum price because I don't think it's guaranteed, nor is it maximum. That's been my experience on this board. And we're all smart enough to understand labor shortages and inflation and all, but when another fire station that's 10,000 square feet was just built just this year at 14 miles away from this one, it's something to be considered. So I'll just lay it out to the other board members, and see what thoughts or questions they might have. Oh, lastly, when I asked about the possibility of coming back from this board in a as far as the economic development project, the purchase of the land and using a term, a number of years to maturity that would normally reflect an asset of this size. And you said you would look into that. Do y'all have any, are you committing to that?
Committing to?
Financing it on a longer term basis?
We were exploring that as a potential option. You know, as I mentioned to you in our meeting, we were caught basically with a very short period of time. We couldn't pull an application quick enough to come to the LGC. And so we put together what we could do in terms of financing the options that we had available to us, looked at it. What you were looking at is what we believed to be the best option on the table for that moment. Sure. One of the things that happened, as I'd indicated, that project had been going on for roughly 9 years. We assimilated that land and shopping for quite some time to find some sort of economic development partner. And they were just options. Sure. We were able to renew those options. The interchange at I-95 at Sunset Avenue created access to 80 million cars going up and down the road. As we all know, the legislation proposed with the entertainment district, sort of fell into our lap as related to that particular site. We have been looking for a partner, but until that intersection has been developed, there really is not a whole lot of interest. The whole conversation with gaming, entertainment districts, the whole conversation associated with that created an understanding of what the value of that land is. I personally, and I believe our council personally feels that what develops there site control wise will have a tremendous impact on the city of Rocky Mount going forward for the next 20, 30, maybe longer years. And as a result, made the effort to actually exercise those particular options. I think we are committed, we are committed to making sure that the city of Rocky Mount remains healthy from a fiscal standpoint. We believe that this is, as you understand, and I've shared it with you, we do have a letter of intent to acquire some of that land at a price that I'd rather not disclose in a public forum, but well exceeds what our average cost is on a per acre basis. And so we're in the process of trying to ascertain how to balance all the things on the table. We believe that we're here. We believe that we can pay for this. We brought our financial advisors, obviously our accounting staff, to be able to answer any of those specific questions. But from a global standpoint, that's where we are. That's where we're committed, and that is something that we believe that we can make happen.
And I just want to say, lastly, to the mayor's credit, when we were meeting, he had had a conversation with the fire chief the morning before. I don't want to put any words in your mouth. You asked the question: Is the fire safety as a result of closing station number 2, and is the fire safety of our citizens in jeopardy? And the answer was no.
The answer was no. It's obviously not ideal.
Right.
Number 2 is one of our busier stations in the city of Rocky Mount, and that has some impact on service. But we don't believe that we're jeopardizing anybody today, or we wouldn't have closed it.
Thank you. Thanks. Secretary Marshall.
Well, I don't understand all of the things that get said around this table. Let me make sure. I guess it's mostly for Jennifer. If the debt service for this is added to the debt service that they already have, whether it's from the entertainment district project and all the other things that they have, are they going to be able to pay for this? I mean, it seemed like their growth projections and their debt service was not aligning up too well from what you said. Maybe I misunderstood it.
So even with those growth projections, which most of the time we like to see lower growth projections to be conservative on that, but those growth projections show the way that the transaction is, with the land transaction is now, that they will have $5.6 million deficits for 3 years in the future. Now, it's deficits in their debt service, requirements, which means that they could balance that out by different means. They could take it from reserves, they could take it from capital projects in their CIP. It's not that they would be running negative fund balance. So it's not, I'm not saying that, but.
It would not affect the other things that were pledged for it, the revenue sources that were pledged for it.
As I understand it, right?
That's correct.
Okay, but my overarching concern, which is why I wanted to bring it to the commission's attention, is that if something else in the future pops up as an emergency, that they are projecting these deficits that may affect things in the future on needs that come up to the city if the sales don't take place in a timely manner with the land.
And if I may add, we added 2 cents above our budget neutral rate as a rainy day fund, as a contingency of some sort. That represents approximately a little over $1 million for us on an annual basis.
But your area is an area that is shrinking in population.
The city of Rocky Mount has shrunk in population, but not necessarily the area.
Edgecombe is part of your area. That's shrunk.
Yes,
has Nash shrunk?
I think Nash has maintained its census, and perhaps it's shrunk, but it's.
Well, I mean, as we went through this business with the motor vehicles, it was all about the deficit of jobs, the exit of people, the lack of opportunity. And so a pretty robust growth rate is inconsistent with what we heard just very recently. And I don't know of any magic wand that has happened to change that. And gaming is not going to be that magic wand.
Well, that's not even on the table right now.
I understand. That's why I say it's not a magic wand. So, you know, it's almost hard for me to comprehend that you feel that growth rate is possible. And I hate to see, I mean, not hate, it would be horrible if other services had to be cut for debt service. Other deferred maintenance, all those kind of things that come up. And heaven knows you've had your once in a gazillion year happening with the fire there, and, you know, they do happen.
I'd like to defer to our financial folks to walk you through the budget, why we think the numbers are solid, where the growth is occurring. I do know and do believe firmly that the intersection of 64 creates an access of 80 million cars that we have not heretofore really been able to appreciate. And its location and positioning relative to the triangle, relative to other commercial corridors, I do think can support some growth, at least as it relates to the 330 acres of land. In terms of the larger
Using Mr. Butler's test, do you have a Chick-fil-A? No, do you have a Chick-fil-A?
We do have Chick-fil-A. I should have led with that, Mr. Butler.
What, are you making a motion on Chick-fil-A?
Can I ask or make a request?
Yes, but the mayor was deferring to the city manager for a moment.
Well,
finance directors.
And the finance director.
I wanted to mention quickly, and we can let our financial advisor go through the affordability analysis that we had. But just as an example, we have a good amount of cash that funds our capital improvement plan. So that's something that we evaluate on an annual basis in terms of future debt affordability. So not only is it budgeted, but that is something that we consider each and every year in terms of the projects that we choose to include or propose to council for consideration, the amount of cash that we have that goes to support those projects as opposed to financing and other options. Since the event center was mentioned, one of the things that I wanted to just highlight is that while that was contemplated years ago, the event center is on schedule to be profitable by the time it was originally conceived, which is around fiscal year 2027. So we are seeing an increase in the performance of that facility. And so while we are not counting on that as revenue, it is progressing in the right direction. And so I just wanted to provide those things anecdotally because those subjects were brought up. But our financial advisor is here that can walk through the specific debt affordability analysis.
And that event center is a fine place. That is a tremendous asset. My granddaughter plays volleyball there on a fairly regular basis.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am. This is Ted Cole with Davenport. I just wanted to clarify on the repayment plan, the affordability, and make sure we're talking about the same data. I guess maybe Jennifer, you might have been referencing materials that we covered and when we had our pre-application call on the 14th.
Correct, because that's what I had to do.
Perfect. And at that time, yes. However, the caveat is we were modeling an entire $85 million CIP that went several years into the future. So for an $85 million CIP that went out to 2030, yes, we were projecting that there wasn't enough money at that time in the debt fund to fund all of those projects in the future. But that's not what we're funding here today. It's fairly common that local governments would have a CIP that isn't fully funded on year one. So that 3 years of $5 million, it's very important, I think, to keep that in context, that it included all the debt we're talking about plus 40 plus million of debt that might be issued in the future for a CIP. Subsequent to that, and as the budget, FY25 budget was being developed, the city was asked to provide an update to their debt repayment plan, and they provided that in the form of a memo. Some of you may have that, some of you may not. But in that memo, it identifies in fiscal years 28 and 29 that there could be $1.1 to $2 million of additional revenue needed to service this debt if the sale of the property never occurred. So the expectation with the land is that it is going to be sold and they will not own that property within hopefully a very short period of time. If it does not sell and they have to repay the debt under the amortization schedule that's in place, 28 and 29, there's 1.1 and 2 million of additional revenue that they will need to bring into their debt fund to repay that debt and all the other debt they have. So there's a very big distinction between funding the debt that we're asking to approve here, the fire station, and versus what could be 40, 50 million of new debt in the future, which is completely speculative at this point, right? It just isn't what's before all of us. So I do think that's important. And on the growth rate, what we were doing is that we were growing certain revenues by 5% in fiscal 25, the first year of the projections. And then we were stepping down to 2.5% growth in 26 and 2% growth thereafter. So we were using a higher growth rate than we might normally, or you might normally want to see for the first year at hand for the budget they were adopting, FY25. But then the growth was stepping down because we don't know what the future holds and we didn't want to be overly aggressive in the growth rate. So there was not a 5% per year into perpetuity assumption. It was stepping down as we went from 25 to 26 and beyond.
So you needed the 5%. I mean, that's out there. That's high.
And that was being borne out in their budget for FY25 that they just adopted. So it was an informed growth rate based on what they were seeing in fiscal 24 at that point, embarking on the FY25 budget.
Not the other way around. You need it, so you're estimated at 5%.
No.
Is it panning out to be that way now?
Yeah, the FY25 budget had significant
was it
24 results.
Was the 24 growth rate 5%?
Based off budget, I mean, our collection rate on some of our taxes were higher. Our numbers have been more solid. Our efficiency and operations have borne some of that out. That's at least what I've been seeing.
5% worth?
Right, and the
speak to that.
Well, the adopted 25 budget really panned out based on the assumptions, and so in the process of being in a city in 2 counties with 2 revals and consideration of the tax rate, these assumptions really bear it out. And so I think the explanation was very good because it was based on the trends we were seeing for the closest upcoming budget. So now that budget has been approved, and so those assumptions are bearing out.
Do we know the growth rate? Do we know what it was in 2024?
Well, we may, it sort of it's a mixture of, are we talking about growth rate in real property taxes, sales tax? I mean, all of those are growing at different percentages,
I'm
right?
talking about the whole mess, overall.
I think in everything we've seen, and keep in mind FY24, while it's over, much of the information related to sales tax lags, 3 to 4 month lag. And I think what we've seen is that, yes, it's consistent with what we've modeled, but it's not fully accounted for yet.
Okay.
Going back to her specific question, leading up to the end of the fiscal year, taking 3 quarters into account in 2 months, 3 quarters in 2 months, were you on the growth projection that she asked you about? Yes or no? 5%.
Yeah, that came from the city. That came from the budget department. It was not backed into how do we make this work. It was, this is what we would want to assume for FY25, and then acknowledging that years beyond that we should step down because we don't know what the future holds.
Mr. Chairman, may I be recognized?
Absolutely. You have the floor.
Thank you. My first question is directed towards the LGC staff. If I remember correctly, in the last meeting where we discussed this issue, and I'm singularly talking about the fire station, has anything that staff has learned in the meetings that have happened in this meantime that has changed your recommendation?
Again, we were presenting concerns, and we at this time can't have a recommendation or not recommendation, which is kind of where we were the last time. So we just wanted to present the concerns. So the application is complete. The application met all the criteria, and we just wanted to make sure that all the information was presented.
Okay, I'm sorry. Just to clarify, it was my understanding in the last meeting that staff made a recommendation. Are you saying there was never a recommendation, or that recommendation has changed? I want to make sure that I'm following you correctly.
No, because this is the first time it's been on the agenda, we did not have a recommendation or not a recommendation at this point or last month. It was, we're presenting it as is.
Are there any material deficiencies in the application?
Only the debt management practices that we wanted to bring to the commission members, and those were outlined. I will say that they do have a financial performance indicator of concern, which Kendra will speak to, that would be for any other unit that has one of those FPICs. But in regards to the other findings, no, everything has been identified and verified.
Does staff usually have a recommendation in matters such as this?
We have either recommend, not recommend, or we have no opinion and just present it. All three have happened.
With no recommendation or thoughts today?
Correct.
Kendra?
To speak to the
Auditor Holmes, and Kendra was going to respond, but you still have the floor.
Okay, I'm happy to hear that response. It sounds like we, in these situations, usually have a recommendation, but I guess today is this different from normal protocol? I'm not sure why there isn't a staff recommendation one way or the other, considering how long we've been talking about this issue.
Because the concerns needed to be brought to the commissioners and have discussion within the commissioners. So that is why that there is no recommendation nor not recommendation.
That is interesting. But as to my second question, which is directed to the Rocky Mount team, can you all talk to us about the health of your CIP and fund balance regarding like a potential deficit in your ability to cover it?
Yeah, this is Ted Cole with Davenport. We're the financial advisor to the city, and that's related to the conversation we were having a bit ago. So as the FY25 budget has evolved and is now adopted, as the mayor said, they've gone 2 pennies above, I think it was above revenue neutral.
That's correct.
Both Edgecombe and Nash County had revaluations. They had to publish the revenue neutral rate for the city. They adopted a tax rate 2 pennies above that. And the LGC staff had requested a memo on the repayment plan for this debt that was provided. And at this point, it includes the land in the current amortization, which is that 59-month loan. And what the memo shows on the debt repayment is if the land does not sell, because if the land sells, that money comes back and it pays down the debt. We have that flexibility built into that loan. It can be paid down incrementally, in whole. We can release collateral piecemeal as different parcels might sell.
Can I interrupt you because it's an important point? If that land gets sold and that money comes back, there's nothing in writing that says it has to go toward paying down the debt, is there?
I don't know whether that was in the loan document or not.
I don't think it is. The city can do anything it wants to with it.
That's our intention to pay it, Mr. Treasurer.
I know.
Yeah, that may be the case, although I think it's worth double checking. At any rate, if the sale of the property does not occur, so they're sitting on this land and they have to start amortizing the principal under the scheduled repayment in fiscal year 28, they would need to come up with about $2 million, and in fiscal year 29, about $1.1 million. That's the extent of what they would need in the debt service fund. Not addressing what happens to the fund balance. That money could come from fund balance if they determine they have fund balance adequate to make that transfer. It could come from cuts in other parts of the budget. And importantly, I think it could come from other funds to the extent that, for example, water, sewer, electric, who ultimately will benefit from this development by having new users, they could also contribute from water, sewer, electric if they needed to and if they chose to. So yes, in the most recent version of the memo that reflects the 25 adopted budget, they would need to come up with, without land sales, 1.1 to 2 million for a 2-year period. And they believe that's very manageable. As well, the debt that we have on that land can be restructured if they ever determine that's necessary. That is built into the loan, that it could be refunded or restructured. Obviously, that would be subject to city council approval and LGC approval.
Mr. Treasurer, to respond to your question about Connor Cruz, McGuire Woods, in the event that the city sells one of those parcels, the loan agreement, the installment financing contract with PNC requires that to be held in a sinking fund. And then on the next expiration date, it's called, annually, those proceeds have to be applied to pay down the principal balance and the amount of the proceeds received. So that, I think that answers your question.
And just for final context, in our approved CIP plan for fiscal year 25, we have over that amount of cash budgeted towards capital improvement projects, just to give a flavor of the practice of having cash available for capital improvement projects or additional debt service.
Mr. Wooten has a question, and when Alder Holmes gets through, and I have a question for Mr. Cole based on an answer to Mrs. Alder Holmes' question. So, Alder Holmes, you still have the floor.
My next question is regarding the convention center. My understanding of convention centers that they're typically not profitable initially. Are there any particular challenges that would make this your convention center any different? were your projections accurate? Any issues of mismanagement?
Certainly no issues of mismanagement. I would say the initial projections were for the event center to the operations to support the expenditures and debt service, or excuse me, their revenues that they generate to support their expenditures and debt service by fiscal year 27. And I mentioned earlier that we are on track to do that. And so we're looking forward to even more growth beyond that, but we're certainly on track with the original plan.
As it relates to the public safety issue, initially there was a lot of discussion about whether or not people were in jeopardy or not in terms of public safety. Would having this fire station or approving this request decrease response times, or how would that impact the community in terms of public safety?
Well, I'll say approval of this request would certainly give us the opportunity to improve our already good response times. I also think that from talking to the community, they are very excited about having a new fire station, particularly in the location that it's in. This is something that they've been looking forward to for some time, and so we feel close to the finish line now. So I was at a community meeting just last month, and they are very excited about seeing the facility. They have a very good relationship with the our fire department, and so they're also excited for them to be able to get the type of improvements that modern fire stations have for our overall operations.
Thank you, and thank you, Mr. Treasurer.
Yes, ma'am. Mr. Cole, since you brought up the land acquisition, as FA, did you recommend that the city do it for 59 months?
We assessed a number of different options, including long-term debt, and I think you received a copy of all of that analysis. And when you look at the timeline of what they were faced with the expiration of the options of December 31st, there was no option to come to the local government commission.
But you'd had the options for 9 years.
No, they haven't had it for that long. I think it's passed through. And
we own the options. You know, they've been continued in some piece or part for at least 9 years. Yeah.
So,
with never a need to exercise them until we demonstrated value.
Mr. Wooten, I apologize. I'm looking for hands, but you have the floor.
That's perfectly all right. Thank you, Mr. Treasurer. McKinley Wooten from the Department of Revenue. I think I understand staff's response to Auditor Holmes's question, you know, to recommend or not to recommend. But in the information that we were sent that sets out Rocky Mount's response, it ends with a statement that LGC staff reviewed and the response of the city and found it to be acceptable. So my question is just a very brief question. Is that still the case today, that the staff finds the response of the city acceptable?
Thank you, because that was my understanding as well, and I seem to recall very clearly that there was a staff recommendation, but you know, I just went through our minutes and I don't see sort of a transcript, but I'm surprised at the sudden no recommendation or thoughts.
To clarify, Mr. Wooten, I believe the document you're referring to is what Kendra is about to address, which is the city's response to the financial performance indicator of concern. I think what you quoted there is pretty much verbatim what we put at the end of each of our FPIC responses once they've been. So that's a separate issue. The financial performance indicator of concern, those arise when certain thresholds are essentially either met or not met with regards to information from their audited financial statements. So that's separate and apart from the debt application. And so that's what Kendra was going to address. The city, independently of this debt application, responded to those financial performance indicators of concern, and that response is, I believe, is what you're noting there, that staff found that response adequate.
I appreciate that clarification. Thank you so much.
Kendra?
Yes, so the City of Rocky Mount had 5 financial performance indicators of concern.
that are listed out. One of those is that their water and sewer fund had negative cash flow to the tune of $1 million in fiscal year 23. Their water and sewer capital asset condition ratio, which is the estimate of the remaining life of their infrastructure, was at 44%, which we like to see it at least 50%. And then their electric fund also had negative cash flow to the tune of $3.6 million. They had some material weaknesses and significant deficiencies, statutory violations that were noted in their audit report. And one of those statutory violations was that their finance officer was not bonded for the proper amount according to the statute that have been laid out for that. So in their response, they addressed that their water and sewer, the negative cash flow, with informing us that they have increased beginning July 1, 2023, their water and sewer rates. Their water and sewer rates increased by 7.5%, their sewer rates by 8.5%. So we will be looking into their fiscal year 24 audited financial statements to see the effect of those rate increases. And hopefully it will take care of that concern for fiscal year 24. Also, they are continuing to do an assessment of improving their infrastructure, and that is what that financial performance indicator concern is really aiming for, is for the units to be aware of the aging of their infrastructure and to have a plan in place. There have been some material weaknesses that were noted. The city felt like that was the result of employee turnover and extended key personnel vacancies. Those material weaknesses were noted in the audit report as the necessity for prior period adjustments due to the way some things were recorded that were not in compliance with GASB statements, and so those corrections needed to take place. Those were related to sales tax accruals. They were, some of them were related to the implementation of GASB 87, which we've seen in multiple units across the state as having that, the need to make those adjustments. And then one of them was related to correctly including an installment purchase that was authorized in April of 2022. They had to do a prior period adjustment for that. So when we make the statement that we have reviewed the response to the city and found it to be acceptable, that is in reference to them addressing the FPICs that have come up, and that's what we mean by acceptable. They have addressed those FPICs in a manner that we believe to be well thought out and addressing the issues.
Thank you. Just a couple of quick things. Just to be clear, your application, well, it's, and Alder Holmes, you were referring back to the last meeting. The reason it's on the agenda today is because you wanted it to be on the agenda. So that's why we are where we are.
Yes, Mr. Treasurer, that is correct. I did want this item on the agenda. More specifically, I wanted a discussion exclusively of the issue of debt financing regarding the financing of the fire station. I believe you had some additional concerns, but my request was as to the ability of the city regarding the financing agreement for the fire station.
Thank you. And I appreciate Ms. Hunter sending over the conflict statement, and she responded back to an email, so I want to be clear for the record. The conflict statement, we, the undersigned, this is the whole city council, have reviewed the owners and individuals named for the properties relative to Project Winter, and we have no conflicts of interest to disclose. And so I just received this, right before we walked into the meeting. And then I responded back in an email. Does that also relate to any of the land or any of the property that's surrounding the fire station? And the response back to me, I just want to say for the record, was that also applies to this. Is that correct? Okay. So all the people that signed this have no financial or tangential interest in any of this land around the fire station.
That's correct.
Okay. All right. Thank you. And lastly, Mr. Cole, what can the interest rate on the loan that you recommended for 59 months, what can that interest rate top out at?
10%. It's a 1-year loan. It's a 1-year rate that will reset every January. It does have a cap, 10%.
And what is the rate now?
It's a little over 5%, I believe.
So if the interest rate can go up. It's pegged, benchmarked.
It's based on a formula that can go up or go down.
I understand those terms, but generally what makes it go up?
Taxable interest rates moving higher.
Okay. All right.
It's a taxable loan, so it's based on a taxable indice, short-term taxable index that is at a high level right now because of what the Fed has been doing with short-term rates. We'll see what the future holds.
So it's based on a short-term taxable rate or a 10-year
short-term
MSRP
taxable rate. It's a 1-year rate.
1-year rate. Okay. Are you expecting it to go higher?
We analyzed it. It all depends on what the Fed does, frankly, whether they cut, whether they hold. I suppose they could increase further. There's lots of very smart people who spend a lot of time looking at that can't agree.
Well, I'm not sure that was a compliment that was deserved in Washington, D.C. these days.
Well, I know. I'm talking about economists,
okay.
not politicians.
Yeah.
No offense, economists.
And I just want to say that my history with this issue with Rocky Mount since I've been the treasurer is my history. I don't deny it. I have said what I have said, and I stand behind everything I've said since I've been the treasurer, number one. Number two, I've always been concerned, and I've said this many times, competency, no conflicts of interest, good government, and transparency. I've never said anything different than that, and I don't apply that standard to you differently than I do anyone else. Number two. Number three, it would have been better to come to this board, since you had these options for 9 years, to finance this in a traditional way. But that's the choice y'all made. And then when you made that choice, the LGC said this is going to limit your ability to do things in the future. But lastly, and most importantly, is that when there was an opportunity to build this station for $4 million several years ago, when we talk about meeting the fire safety needs of this community, I'm not sure the folks you met with, Mr. Manager, know all that, but you should have been meeting in a new fire station now. But it didn't happen for a third of the cost. And so how I feel about casinos is how I feel about casinos. Okay, that's not on the table. How I feel about design build is how I feel about design build. Guaranteed maximum prices are, my experience, never been guaranteed or maximum. And since we've just had an experience that I don't know if anybody has explored about actually how to meet the fire needs of this community more economically at a potentially much lower cost to build a new fire station for this community. I mean, we're talking about, if my memory's good, and I'm not sure, but 1 penny on the tax rate produces about $464,000 worth of juice, right?
About 500 and something.
Okay, well, I'm sorry, I got
rounding here.
500 cities to keep up with. So my point is that every cent matters, especially to fixed and lower income people. Every cent on the tax rate matters. Every $1 million that can be saved by putting this fire station out without a design build type of philosophy and just see what the bids come back at could make a tremendous difference on the financial flexibility of the community and the tax rate on the citizens. That's it for me. Nothing more, nothing less. And so for those reasons, I'll make a motion that this application be denied. And I'd entertain a second to that motion, hoping that some of the things I've said would be taken into account and try to figure out a way to do it more efficiently.
Mr. Chairman, I've been attempting to be recognized prior to your motion, if I may.
Well, we have a motion on the table, and I'll entertain a second. And we're pulling out the orders, the rules in a moment, okay?
I'm sorry, I didn't hear you.
I'm asking for a second, then we can go to a motion, then we can go to discussion, and then there may be an opportunity. So just hang on a minute, please.
I'll second that motion.
We have a motion on the second to deny the application for the design build of the $11 million fire station. Now we're into discussion. Alder Holmes?
My perspective is that comparing what the cost of what it would have been years ago is relevant, but also not. I think the reality is I wish I had purchased more real estate in 2010 after the recession, because housing prices have doubled and sometimes tripled. So that's just a reality of the situation. But I contend and still have not gotten a straight answer from staff exclusively as to whether, outside of this being Rocky Mount and the history that they seem to have with the LGC or with any particular individual on this board, would this have received a positive recommendation or not? And I can't seem to get an answer to that without jumbling in a bunch of other issues in addition to the fire station, which is, my primary issue of concern. So I will be voting against your motion, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you.
Do you want clarification?
Sure.
I know Jennifer's already responded, but I think this is one of those instances, and what the commission typically sees is things that have been worked on by staff for weeks and months, and we're able to get to a point where we can make a recommendation. Occasionally, it does happen that we have concerns, like Jennifer identified with this one, because at the end of the day, it's the commission voting on these and relying on staff recommendations. So generally, we can get to a point where staff is very comfortable and can make that recommendation. In some scenarios, the application is presented incomplete, but we have some additional concerns that we believe commission members need to be aware of in order for them to make a fully informed vote on something. Again, how you vote that's not our role. Our role is to make sure commission members have the facts they need. So in this case, we wanted to make sure just that all commission members were aware of staff's concern, so that you were fully informed in order to make your vote. That's our role here.
Thank you. What was the date the application was received? Do we know?
We're looking that up.
And Alder Holmes, to clarify, the article I'm referring to is from 2021, so 4 years ago. And 3 years ago, sorry, I'm a little better at math than that. And secondly, the being able to build a fire station cheaper is this year. So it's not 10 years ago. Cindy?
Got it. I didn't see evidence of that in my. Can you reference what you're referring to in the documents that we have?
I don't know what documents you have. Go ahead, Cindy.
It wasn't in the packet. We'll come back.
I think I've got all of them.
It's on.
Right here.
It's It's on page 1 in the background under LGC staff concerns at the bottom of the page. Town of Nashville, October 2023, $5 million.
Okay. Go ahead.
I'm sorry. So you said that whatever statement you just read meant that they could build it cheaper now?
No, you're putting words in my mouth. No, that's not accurate. I did not say that or infer that. What I said was the city council had a motion on the table to replace the number 2 fire station on September 29th of 2021 for $4 million. And then the LGC approved recently the building of a new fire station in Nashville within the last year, 14 miles away. Okay. But I have a motion and a second on the table. Any further discussion? The motion to deny. Okay. Hearing none. Yes.
Is your motion based upon the current cost of the building? Because the other's past history.
Yes. Clerk, call the roll.
All right, this is a motion to deny the application. Falwell Butler. Auditor Holmes?
Nay, and it's unfortunate that the motion was made, after I raised my hand for further discussion, but my response is nay.
That was not intentional, Auditor Holmes.
Thank you.
Secretary Marshall?
No.
No. Mr. Wooten?
No.
Thank you. Mr. Burns is absent. Ms. Harvey?
No.
Thank you. And Councilwoman Hoffman?
No.
Thank you. And Mr. Philbeck?
Aye.
All right, so 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 3. So that motion fails.
Okay. Motion fails to deny the application. So I'll entertain another motion.
Mr. Wooten, I'll make the motion to approve the application.
Okay. Motion made by Mr. Wooten. Second.
Second, Auditor Holmes.
Second by Auditor Holmes. Any further discussion? Hearing none, the clerk will call the roll.
Okay, thank you. Rocky Mount application to approve. Wooten Holmes. Secretary Marshall? Aye. Thank you. Whoops, wait a second. Mr. Butler?
No.
Ms. Harvey?
Aye.
Thank you. Councilwoman Hoffman?
Aye.
Thank you. Mr. Philbeck?
No.
Treasurer Falwell?
No.
Right. 5 yes, 3 no. That motion carries.
A clarifying question for City Lead. Thank you for coming, by the way. Now that this has been approved by the LGC, if the city goes back and determines that doing this in a traditional way in terms of the cost of this fire station, replacing this fire station, more appropriate.
It's a discussion I'm prepared to have with council.
Yeah, I'm not holding you to it. I'm just, because you got your approval.
Yes.
Okay. But just because we've approved it doesn't mean that you can't come in and do it cheap, less expensively. If that, go ahead, Madam.
And I will add to it, my vote is because of the safety of the citizens. This has been, long in coming, and the citizens deserve better. And you can do it for a lower amount, I think.
Mr. Chairman, I would echo your concerns. Obviously, every single penny counts, and I agree that the city should go back and make sure that they're as efficient with tax dollars as absolutely possible.
And lastly, Jennifer, if that were to occur, then what would happen to their flexibility in terms of their debt?
obviously, if, depending on the way they finance it, if it could, include it, but it would give them more flexibility for future transactions.
Thank you. Thank you all.
Thank you.
You might make it. So, thank you.
Thank you.
Mayor.
Yes, sir. Good to see you too, Mr. Treasurer.
Is everybody good to keep rolling?
I think we could run.
Okay.
Go.
Members.
Is everybody okay? All members okay? Thumbs up?
All good.
All right.
We're at number 12.
Whoever our guest photographer is, welcome.
Thank you. It's going to
Tell
count.
me your name.
Andre Knight, and thank you all for supporting the fire station. Desperately needed in our community the last 40 years. It was built on the home site of the Buck Leonard, the Negro League baseball player, across from the Wright Center or Doubleday Health Center. And it has somewhat, a little bit impacted our community, but we desperately need it. And I've been a long supporter of Ms. Marshall growing up in Rocky Mount in North Carolina Central. And so I just want to thank Auditor Holmes and those who supported it. And I do understand some history with Rocky Mount, but we are here to serve the needs of our people. And I just want to thank you for understanding that, and our citizens are happy. We go back and do stuff with our city manager and our finance department.
We'll be watching.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate that. Thank you.
Unit updates.
And Treasurer, I think we'll just, the updates are all included in the packets, so members can read the updates. There are a number of items for vote, though, if we could focus on those.
The 4 votes that we're requesting of the commission today are related to the town of Spring Lake. The town of Spring Lake received a Golden Leaf Foundation grant for some repairs to their stormwater infrastructure. The Board of Commissioners voted to accept that, and we are asking today of the commission to pass a resolution to ratify that acceptance. Going along with that, that grant, there's the need to adopt a multi-year grant project ordinance to go with that grant. Also related to the grant is a budget amendment is needed to move $75,000 that was in the adopted budget for this fiscal year to make that available as the match for that grant. So those are the 3 votes that are required, or we're asking for in relation to that grant. And then the 4th is to correct a typographical error that was done on the schedule of fees provided to us when the budget officer presented the budget for this fiscal year 25. The calculations in the budget were based on the $384 solid waste availability fee, but there was just a mistake on the schedule itself where it's listed the fee as being $348. So we're just asking for a vote to correct that.
Motion?
You want to do all 3 at one time?
Yes.
Yeah,
You may take them all if you like.
All right.
There's
Okay,
4
go ahead.
total.
Make a motion, we do all 4.
Okay.
Best of luck, Spring Lake.
And second?
Second.
Any further discussion? Hearing none, the clerk will call.
Hold on.
Oh, sorry.
All 4 includes
No,
the,
no. Okay, to clarify, no, in packet, the 3 items in item G, it's the
Everything
resolution
G.
accepting the grant and 3 budget amendments.
okay, got
Yes,
3 amendments.
thank you
and 1
for clarifying it.
Yes.
Motion second.
Second.
All right.
Yes.
Any further discussion? Hearing none, the clerk will call the roll.
All right, the Spring Lake resolution accepting the grant and the 3 budget amendments that go along with that town, Mr. Butler, Mr. Philbett, and Auditor Holmes.
Aye.
Thank you. Secretary Marshall.
Aye.
Mr. Wooten.
Aye.
Thank you. Ms. Harvey.
Aye.
Councilwoman Hoffman.
Aye.
And Mr. Treasurer.
Aye.
All right, that carries.
Okay.
G.
Item 13, resolution returning Spring Lake.
Commission members, you have in attachment H, a resolution returning financial control to the town of Spring Lake. The second page of the resolution identifies items to be addressed over the next few weeks by LGC staff and town staff in order to make that transition smooth for the town. Those items that we're committing to and we're asking the town to commit to are listed, but the resolution will return control to the town effective August 1st, or the date that a town appoints a properly bonded finance officer. Again, Kendra is currently the finance officer appointed by the LGC. With the return of control, the town would need to appoint a new finance officer. So again, resolution to return control effective the earlier of August 1st, or the date the town appoints a properly bonded finance officer.
Motion to approve.
Move the resolution.
Second.
I second that.
Any further discussion?
They are ready for this?
I have a question.
Yes, ma'am.
So we stated the effective date is August 1st, or the date that the town appoints a bonded finance officer. Are both of those dates contingent on all of these things on the second page having occurred?
Not necessarily. Ms. Harvey, we can work on those even after. Most can be completed by then, but none of them preclude the return of control. And so, again, most of them can easily be on staff side completed. And if not, obviously, we'll continue working with them. We'll continue monitoring them. So we're not, we'll make sure all those items are addressed. But no, they're not. The return doesn't need to be contingent upon completion of those items. And that's similar to how we've done other return of control resolutions as well. So.
Further discussion? And Secretary Marshall asked, are they ready? We've performed our statutory duties and responsibilities. So, clerk will call the roll.
All right, attachment H, the resolution to return financial control to Spring Lake. Hoffman, Butler. Auditor Holmes.
Aye.
Secretary Marshall. Aye. Mr. Wooten.
Aye.
Ms. Harvey.
Aye.
Mr. Philbeck.
Aye.
Treasurer Falwell.
Aye.
Motion carries.
Bear with us just a moment, please.
Last item on the agenda is a discussion of the appeals for the late audit notices. Again, we're only providing these to you at this point because there are so many, and some came in through the end of June. We felt it would be too rushed to have members need to review these and make a decision within 3 or 4 days. Wanted to give you some overview, though, of what we've been seeing, and just a few highlights from the packet that you were provided. First, again, as a reminder, there were 135 units that received notices of noncompliance because their audits weren't submitted as of April 1st, again, required by statute. Since that time, and I'm actually going to go backwards in your packets, start with the good news. Since that time, we have had 60 counties and municipalities submit their audit before July 1st, which means those units are essentially off the table for any kind of LGC action with regards to withholding of sales tax for a late audit. I do want to highlight, in your packet, you'll see 3 of those units, Burgaw, Carthage, and McDonald, were actually 2 years behind at the time the notices were provided, and were able to get those 2 years of audits in within that time. So, again, well done by all 60 of these counties and municipalities getting those audits in, but wanted to highlight those 3 in particular. On your, you have a summary of the units that submitted what we're calling GSA appeals. That's for guideline GSA stands for Guideline for Successful Appeal. Again, the commission established in December of 2023 a guideline for successful appeal under which an appeal made by a county or municipality would be considered successful. Essentially, these units met that criteria, so no real action is required by the commission. You don't need to review these appeals. You have them, so you can review them to see what kinds of issues these units are facing. But we will be presenting a resolution to you in August, essentially just formalizing the acceptance of these appeals. But again, these do not need to be individually reviewed or considered. They met that guideline for successful appeal, so essentially they're good to go.
Is that we're not going to have to meet with each one of them?
Correct. So that one will be one sort of blanket resolution presented to you in August. Just
the decision whether to grant their appeal or whatever. Is that?
We're coming up to that next. So these are the ones that met that predefined guideline for successful appeal. So these, again, no individual action is needed. And I will note for your list, and we'll provide this via email updates as well. On your list of units submitting guidelines based on the guideline for successful appeal, both Fremont and Stoneville have since submitted their audits. So again, we won't be including them in the resolution. And I would again anticipate that leading up to the August meeting, we're going to have more updates for you. More units will be submitting their audits, and we'll continue to update you. So again, sort of trying to go easiest to hardest here. We've got some units who've got their audits in. We have units who submitted GSA appeals. We do have one unit who is not appealing. I will note that several units indicated they would not be appealing. I wanted to be clear that all of these units were understood. Again, this is a new law. It's somewhat complicated. I wanted to be sure that all those units were aware what it meant to not appeal. And after having discussions with a number of those units, they decided to appeal. My intent wasn't to change their mind or to convince them to appeal, but only to make sure that they understood that they had the ability to appeal under the law. So I did speak with the one unit not appealing. They are clear on their ability to appeal. They are clear on the LGC's authority. And so we have one unit who is not choosing to appeal. We do have, on the next page, going backwards again, I apologize. We have a number of non-responsive units, and just to be clear, to the treasurer's point last meeting, this doesn't mean they didn't communicate with us or correspond with us. It only meant that they did not submit anything by July 1st. They either did not submit an audit or they did not submit an appeal like they were required to. We did make sure, Mr. Butler just walked out. We did make sure that our staff made contact with every single unit, as in we either talked to someone or we received an email back acknowledging, so we knew that they received that notice. In some cases, they told us the audit would be in, and it just never came in, and they didn't file an appeal. But there were only 9 units that did not submit either an audit or an appeal as of July 1st, and those are listed there for you. We've also provided a list of the ways we've tried to communicate this. Again, we know it's a new law, but we've really tried our best to communicate this in as many ways as we can, including that outreach to every single unit by our staff.
County on that list.
Yes, ma'am. So that is sort of a high-level summary of everything other than what Mr. Butler asked about, which is the ones that the commission will have to consider. What we're calling the, quote, non-GSA appeals. Again, the appeals that were made based on other good cause, what the commission had adopted in the guideline for successful appeal in December. The commission wanted to leave it open that even if a unit didn't meet the guideline for successful appeal, they could still appeal based on other good cause. And so essentially these 48 units were not able to meet that guideline for successful appeal, but have appealed based on other good cause. We further broke these down into groups for you commission members by by the number of years that these units had not submitted an audit. We have 27 units who appealed, who only have the fiscal year 23 audit outstanding. They're only 1 year outstanding. We have another group of 20 units that are missing 2 years of audits, and we have 1 unit who appealed who is missing 3 years of audits. I will note, on the note of of units that did not file an audit or an appeal, we do have 1 unit on there that is 4 years missing audits, but they filed neither an audit nor an appeal. So again, 27 units with 1 audit missing, 20 units with 2 audits missing, and 1 unit with 3 audits missing. These are only the units that submitted an appeal. So again, we provided you with those categories to show you sort of what the patterns may be with regards to units not submitting. Also, if you look at those cover pages that are on each of the appeals by the units, what we've done there for you is summarize the date of submission, so you can see what kind of trends there may be and how late these units are. Again, our due date is October 31st. What we tell counties and municipalities we want to see the audit by is October 31st, but for the purposes of late under this law and our reporting to you on those cover pages, we're calling late after July 1st, of basically 1 full fiscal year after the end of the 1 full calendar year after the fiscal year for which the audit was due. So what we'll need to do next is determine, to Mr. Butler's point, how the commission would like to proceed with regards to the 48 appeals. Again, that's a lot of appeals, and the commission has the authority under the law to have the units appear before the commission. We've notified these units to be available virtually for the August meeting in case any members have questions, but our intention wasn't necessarily to ask each unit to present their appeal because you have their appeal in your packets. Staff's recommendation is that you take the opportunity over the next 3 or 4 weeks before the August meeting to read the appeals. We'll have the units available virtually to answer any questions you may have, and then make decisions on those. There were questions about, Mr. Treasurer, how to make this a fair process and how to implement a process with this. We have included in your packets some good cause factors or even mitigating considerations that you might consider when determining whether or not to accept or grant the appeal requested by these units. The commission may also wish to make a blanket recommendation for acceptance, for example, of all the units that weren't able to meet the GSA guidelines but are only 1 year out. So for the purposes of the first year of implementation of this law, the commission might want to consider looking at the units that are only 1 year out and finding that as good cause, even if they weren't able to meet that guideline for successful appeal.
Can I ask that you
Yes.
spend a long meeting that whatever you want us to consider over the next 3 weeks, just put all those great thoughts into an email so that we can get some kind of matrix about what to do.
Yes, ma'am. Can I ask a question? I went through, not with a fine-tooth comb, but most of these. So many of them were personnel issues, either at the town level, town clerk. Once in a while, there were a few of them that got fired, or, those are kind of separate matters. But they couldn't get staff, or they had contracts with some auditor, and they couldn't fulfill because of a variety of issues, got sick, they couldn't keep staff. Maybe 1 or 2 had overcommitted. What are we going to do with those? I mean, really, how do we evaluate whether that's an accurate basis for appeal? I mean, did they truly work hard to find staff, And I see a lot of them are involved in the MAP program with the League of Municipality, yes. All that. Very good mitigating circumstances, but how do we evaluate the truthfulness or the accuracy or the intensity of the personnel matter there?
to say they had?
Good and fair question, and one that I don't know that I can answer. So I think one of the and we'll follow up with an email with this, but again, this is the first year of implementation of this law. I do think it's been highly successful in getting the attention of governing boards and staff of the importance of these audits and what's required. So I think this is a really good step forward with bringing attention to this. I also think it's an opportunity, as we have all these appeals, for LGC staff to work with other stakeholders like the League of Municipalities, like the School of Government, like the Association of County Commissioners, to use these appeals now that we have them and identify what trends we're seeing and what issues we're seeing, and how can we use that to identify what resources are needed, what additional assistance might be needed by these organizations.
I mean, if they could come in and say, if you've been without a finance officer more than 60 days, you need to let the league know. And, you know, they have some ready ombudsperson to help keep the bank reconciliation and all those kind of things going. But it shifts the burden to them. Do they have the capacity to do that? You know, but.
I think we need to get prepared. I mean, Treasurer's going to be gone. I'll be gone. I would suggest that when the legislature reconvenes, because I've talked to a number of members of the General Assembly about this, they don't have a clue what this is about. That whatever committee, subcommittee, House, Senate, that Debbie, you, the ex-treasurer, Elaine, you on it, go before the legislature and say, let me tell you where you are. You passed this thing 2 years ago, because you're going to have mayors and county commissioners who have good rapport with members of the General Assembly that are going to be screaming and kicking all the way before they cut a check and not even realize. I just think some way through the appropriate committee ought to be briefed when the General Assembly reconvenes.
Audits and submitting them timely. So staff's been working hard on this, but we believe it's gotten the attention of the units of government and the importance of the audit. So we will follow up by email.
Thank you. Motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second?
Second, McKinley Wooten.
Thank you, Mr. Wooten. Sorry, I don't see your hand up there. And thank you for joining us. Any further discussion? Hearing none, clerk, call the roll.
Auditor Holmes.
Aye.
Mr. Butler.
Aye.
Ms. Harvey.
Aye.
Councilwoman Hoffman.
Aye.
Mr. Philbeck.
Aye.
Treasurer Boland.
Let's thank all the staff. Thank you very much. We're adjourned.